Chapter 8:15, Assault of the Elites. The assault of the 5 clans of the Middle State was something Ling Han had expected would happen, so he was naturally not surprised. On the other hand, that it had taken so long for someone from the 5 sects to come was actually slightly out of Ling Han's expectations. This was most likely because they had been facing too much pressure from the Purple Moon Empire, and could only now draw out a portion of their people from the 5 sections. He was a little expectant who would be coming. Ling Han walked out of the Imperial Palace, and saw a battleship hovering in the skies above the Imperial Palace. There was a raised flag on which was drawn a creature that could either be an earthworm or a long serpent on it. The Earth Dragon Sect. True, he had killed Jia Ming, so it was logical that the Earth Dragon Sect would send an elite to kill him in vengeance. Such a minor character would actually dare to establish his own nation and empire, what nonsense. An ice-cold voice was heard from the skies. This voice was a little familiar. The Beast Snake King. Ling Han immediately remembered him. Previously, when the 15-eyed Corpse King appeared, a total of 3 Shattering Void tier elites had arrived from the 5 great sects, and the elite from the Earth Dragon sect was precisely this Beast Snake King. Hee, bite me? Ling Han laughed. Lord Beast Snake King, could you allow me to first battle with this person? Su Xiao-ran's voice was heard from aboard the battleship. All right, this person could be considered your internal demon. As long as you eliminate this man, you would be able to break through to the Shattering Void tier in the shortest amount of time. Furthermore, with your talent, as well as the full support and nurturing of your sect, it would not be difficult for you to rush up to the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier in 10+ years, with much awaited battle prowess. Although Su Xiao-ran was not the strongest genius in the history of the Absolute Saber sect, he was the only one who had been recognized by the Absolute Saber. Precisely because of this, even the Beast Snake King expected much from him, or in other words, attached much importance to him. After all, that old elder of the Absolute Saber sect was still alive. Thank you, my lord. Su Xiao-ran leaped down from the battleship, and stood on empty air in the skies. He declared, Ling Han, neither of us will use external aids. Let us have a good battle to our heart's content. Ling Han shook his head, and replied, you are a little bit shameless. You obviously have the cultivation level of the peak of the heaven tier, yet proclaim your desire to have a good battle with me. I really don't know what's wrong with your head. He smiled faintly, and answered, however, if I don't battle with you, you would think I'm actually scared of you. Xiao, he leaped on empty air, and stood on the same level with Su Xiao-ran. He said, come, I am the ruler of the Great Ling Empire. A bunch of clowns, see how I shall suppress you. Su Xiao-ran humphed coldly, and said, what ruler of the Great Ling Empire, you are merely a false ruler. Today, I shall kill you with my saber, so where would there still be any Great Ling Empire? Ling Han picked at his ear, and asked, how many times have you said you would kill me? I'm already bored of listening to it, so could you try saying something new? Then just die. Su Xiao-ran flew over, wielding the Absolute Saber in a slash in Ling Han's direction. There was not much technique in this move. It could be described in one word, and that was fast. Xiao, the saber seemed to have just been raised, yet had already slashed down right in front of Ling Han. Saber ray shone blindingly as if it were the beginning of the world. This Su Xiao-ran could really not be underestimated. Mere weeks had passed, and his abilities once again improved astonishingly. It was not in cultivation, but battle prowess. His comprehension of the path of the saber had increased greatly once again. Wang, the Revere Life sword in Ling Han's hand was trembling as if it was about to fly out of his grip. Saber heart. Ling Han smiled faintly. Sword heart unfolded, and the Revere Life sword immediately steadied. He raised his sword to parry, clang, and just managed to block the blade of the saber that Su Xiao-ran had slashed at him with. If it had been any other cultivator in the deity transformation tier, or even in the heaven tier, they would have been likely beheaded by this strike without seeing more than a blur, for it was so fast that there was no possible way to block it. Even if the eyes could catch sight of the movement of the saber, if one moved too slowly, they would still be unable to block it, and could only use their origin power to take it head-on. But Ling Han was a body cultivator, and had furthermore improved his physique to the level of the heaven tier. It was naturally extremely easy for him to block this strike. The sword and saber clashed, the friction giving rise to endless luster as blinding as the sun. Ling Han gave a strong shove. Pung! Su Xiao was sent flying by the force. He smiled and said, "This strike is indeed very fast, but the power does not seem to be enough." Of course. Power and speed could not be simultaneously achieved. His strike was extremely fast, so its power was naturally lacking. This was also due to the fact that Su Xiao knew that Ling Han had a strange motion technique, and had deliberately practiced fast strikes. He had not thought that Ling Han was so atypical that he'd block it forcefully without even dodging or ducking. With a flip of his body, he steadied his balance. He raised the absolute saber levelly, his eyes cold. Endless saber intent circulated inside his body, solidified, and gushed out, forming thousands of sabers around him. There were all types and shapes, and they had all been formed from saber intent. This would not damage the physical body, but was capable of striking at one's very soul, which was very terrifying. Sword Heart, once mastered, could cut the soul, and Saber Heart, once mastered, could do it as well. "Then take another strike from me," Su Xiao declared coldly. His expression turned serious, and the absolute saber moved slightly, forming multiple ripples. Cracking wind slash. Ling Han dared not be careless. The power of this slash was indeed frightening. He raised the Revere Life sword to chest level, and the sword intent of the mysterious 3000 circulated as a similarly tremendously powerful aura spread out. Aboard the battleship, the Beast Snake King could not help but let out a light exclamation of surprise. Being the strong existence that he was, he naturally immediately realized that Ling Han's sword intent gave him a feeling of familiarity. This is the 3 techniques of black origin. This was one of the ultimate techniques of the Heaven Sword Sect. He was definitely not unfamiliar with it. Su Xiao gave a soft shout, and brandished the absolute saber in an attack. Instantly, the world around them paled, and only pure darkness was left behind. There was merely the endless brightness that was being exuded from the absolute saber, and it surged towards Ling Han. Even if Ling Han opened his eyes, he would not be able to spot Su Xiao. The only thing left was that brilliant saber that was slashing down in his direction. No sight of the wielder, merely the saber. Ling Han remained unafraid. He simply closed his eyes, and merely used his heart to see. Sword Heart. A smile lifted up the corners of his lips. His long sword waved, delivering 3,100 brilliant sword flashes. Each strike was severe, and they shot towards Su Xiao. In theory, 10,000 techniques returned to 1 was the strongest individual killing move, whereas the mysterious 3,000 was to be used in group attacks. Because the power of the attack was divided, its destructive power was naturally not on the same level as 10,000 techniques returned to 1. Yet Ling Han was too strong now, and added with the advantage the Revere Life sword gave him, the power of even a single strike was enough to become a huge threat to Su Xiao. Thus, using the mysterious 3000 was naturally even more effective as the range of attack could be widened. Immediately upon contact, both sides were using their ultimate moves. Hong! Sword flash and saber flash clashed, creating a massive explosion in the skies. Temporarily, everyone had lost their sight and hearing, everything completely white in front of their eyes, and merely a soft humming was left in their ears. When the light subsided, Su Xiao had already retreated 300 meters away. There was a total of 5 wounds on his body that blood was seeping out of, and no matter what he tried, the blood's flow would not cease. In case of a wound that had been inflicted by the Revere Life sword, how could the bleeding be stopped so easily? There were also 3 spots on Ling Han where his clothes had been torn open, but he was still mild and humid like jade, and it could not be seen that he was wounded anywhere after his cultivation of his body art had entered the heaven tier. his physique had also once again improved to another level, and had reached the extent of level 10 precious metal. In the hands of a shattering void tier elite, the absolute saber should be able to leave a mark on level 10 precious metal as well, but if it was Su Xiaoran? It was obviously impossible. Just a bit of a gap could mean a world of difference. Chapter 8:16, Suppressed. Su Xiaoran's expression took a drastic change. His battle prowess was not the slightest bit inferior to Ling Han's, yet his physique was far from being on the same level. In a battle wherein both sides were about equal in power, this difference was absolutely fatal. He took a deep breath, his expression becoming somber. His fighting spirit blazed. If he could still defeat Ling Han in a disadvantageous position, the boost to his confidence would be indescribable. He might even be able to take that final step, and become an elite of the Shattering Void tier. Currently, he could only claim to be a young genius, possessing great potential, yet without achieving the Shattering Void tier cultivation, he was still a minor character at the end of the day. In this great era, only the Shattering Void tier would translate to influence, and have a decisive effect on the situation. Thus, he needed to battle and improve his battle prowess to the utmost. After winning, his mental state would be improved to another level, and his saber heart would enter mastery level. His cultivation would break through to the Shattering Void tier, and he would ascend to the peak of humanity. "We battle," he declared grandly, his full head of black locks dancing behind him, his eyes bright. "As you wish." Ling Han's battle spirit blazed as well. Su Xiaoran had formed Saber Heart. Furthermore, he had reached the level of major accomplishment, so he was precisely the best opponent he could have. Fighting a battle with the latter, Ling Han, too, would be able to enrich his own sword heart. Fight, fight, fight. The two fighters engaged in a ferocious battle. Sword and saber clashed, the collision creating ripples of power that spread out to their surroundings time and again. The absolute saber and revere life sword endlessly clashed. Both were not only level 10 spirit tools, but also in the upper tier amongst such. Even in the hands of these people, they managed to release a terrifying might. The Beast Snake King nodded continuously, and could not help but admit that these two were super geniuses, which made a feeling of treasuring talent arise in him. Unfortunately, one of them was definitely going to die here today. It was not that the Earth Dragon Sect did not have such a genius had died in Ling Han's hands. This was also the main reason why he was personally here. Otherwise, with the tense situation in the war with the Purple Moon Empire, how could an ultimate elite be so easily dispatched here? Odd, how could this brat possibly learn the ultimate technique of the Heaven Sword Sect? The Beast Snake King was internally confused. The three techniques of black origin were no ordinary techniques, but one of the core secret techniques of the Heaven Sword Sect. Even among the true disciples, there were not many that could learn this technique. So what allowed an outsider to learn this technique? However, this was fine. In the end, immortals would descend from the immortal realm, and refine all life of this realm into the realm pill. Even if everyone learnt the three techniques of black origin, so what? Ling Han's right hand wielded his sword, and he had his left palm facing outwards. He endlessly shot strikes with the earth overturning seal golden light flickered, and the destructive power was incomparably frightening. With the upgrade of the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven, his speed was slightly faster than Su Xiaoran's, forcing the latter into taking his attacks head-on. This Su Xiaoran was naturally seriously wounded. Ling Han was a cultivator of body arts, and had terrifying brute power. In a battle at close quarters, for every blow Su Xiaoran delivered, he could at least return 10. How colossal was this difference? Furthermore, his physique had reached the level of the Shattering Void tier, so even if the Beast Snake King moved, he would have to spend a great amount of effort to refine him to death, what more when it was Su Xiaoran. Take note, it was not beat to death, but to refine to death. With physique on the level of level 10 precious metal, who would be able to kill him straight off? They could only use secret techniques to eliminate Ling Han's life force, or have someone with a fully mastered sword heart cut Ling Han's soul. Slicing open his physical body could only be mere thought. From this aspect, Su Ran was already not on the same level as Ling Han. Ling Han was using his opponent to polish his sword heart. In his eyes, this was the only value of Su Ran's life. Su Ran had used all the ultimate techniques in his repertoire. He was indeed very strong, very, very strong, and was definitely one of the strongest elites beneath the level of the Shattering Void tier. However, his opponent was too much of a monster, who, by nature, was already standing in an invincible position. No matter how hard he tried, it was all empty effort, and he could only harvest the bitter fruit of failure. When Ling Han became more and more familiar with using the sword heart, Su Ran began falling into a disadvantage. Then, it became more and more obvious, until he was inhibited. Among every 10 of his moves, 9 were defensive. Su Ran's expression turned ugly. He had already improved his battle prowess to the maximum, but still could not match Ling Han. More importantly, the latter was still in the deity transformation tier. Though his body art was terrifying and had already reached the heaven tier, body art had always been used as something supplementary. What was more important was cultivation. Even if he had the advantage of a whole and a half cultivation tier over Ling Han, he had still been beaten to the point that he practically could not fight back, which made him feel extremely depressed. He could not defeat Ling Han. Even if the Beast Snake King killed Ling Han later, so what? A sore point would be left behind in his heart, and this would naturally become a massive shortcoming when he attempted to break through to the Shattering Void tier, and it would practically be impossible for him to survive the fateful calamity. Enough. The Beast Snake King voiced out. Initially, he had planned to let Su Ran defeat Ling Han before he made his move so that the former would have the opportunity to break through. Yet the end result was that he had helped Ling Han succeed. He could naturally sense that Ling Han's sword heart was improving. I have not lost. Su Ran called out harshly. He was definitely not going to accept defeat. In the few battles he had with Ling Han, he was actually slightly superior. If it was not because he desired to kill Ling Han too much, he would not even need to awaken the Absolute Saber. The result was that he failed every time, and could only watch as Ling Han became stronger and stronger. Humph. The Beast Snake King moved directly, grabbing onto Su Ran. After sealing his cultivation, he tossed him on board the battleship. He looked at Ling Han coldly, and commanded, "Kill yourself." "Old Beast Snake, where does your confidence come from?" Ling Han asked loftily. The Beast Snake King smirked coldly, and said, "You merely have a formation technique, but that is only worth 8 stars of Shattering Void tier at most. Do you know what my battle prowess is worth?" "I don't, but it hasn't reached 15 stars in any case," Ling Han replied without the slightest reservations and with complete honesty. King actually dared to say it. The Beast Snake King could not help but feel gloomy. His battle prowess naturally could not possibly have reached 15 stars. If not, why would he have been afraid of that 15-eyed corpse king? This brat really was stubborn. He could not help but move. His right hand stretched out, and his arm, like a serpent, was twisting and turning, heading to grab in Ling Han's direction. Ling Han was not the slightest bit afraid, and brandished his sword to take this blow head-on. The Beast Snake King was enraged. A mere junior in the deity transformation tier. Although his body arts cultivation had reached the heaven tier, it was still who knew how many years away from being able to take on the attack of a Shattering Void tier elite. This was practically an insult to him. Who would be able to humiliate a Shattering Void tier elite? Kill. The Beast Snake King's palm lowered, forming into a mountain, and pressed down on Ling Han. He wanted to smack Ling Han into mush with one blow. Without a doubt, Ling Han was pressed down from the skies by this smack. With the strike of a colossal, sky-overshadowing palm, he dropped outside the city. Hong, long, long, the earth was trembling and the city walls were shaking as if an earthquake had occurred. Was he dead? Su Ran did not know what he was feeling. How could this great foe of his be so foolish to actually dare to have an open confrontation with a Shattering Void tier ultimate elite? Furthermore, it was an experienced veteran shattering void tier elite like the Beast Snake King. No matter how he looked at it, this did not seem like Ling Han's style. Meanwhile, the Beast Snake King raised his hand. That palm of origin power that was several hundreds of meters long on the ground had disappeared. A disdainful expression appeared on his face, but he immediately stiffened soon after. That was because on the ground, Ling Han swept away the dirt from his clothes, and got back to his feet. As he did so, he stretched out his arms and kicked out his feet a few times as if he had merely tripped carelessly. Chapter 8:17, Shuang moves. A palm strike from a shattering void tier elite was only equivalent to Ling Han stumbling. Everyone's expressions changed drastically. Did this guy have the life of a cockroach and could not be killed? A shattering void tier elite moved, and he was actually unscathed. Oh, there was indeed some dust on him, but that was all. Setting aside Ling Han, even if it was another shattering void tier elite, he would be severely wounded or even instantly killed with such a blow. No, this had to be a lie. Su Xiuran's eyes were popping out in shock, his mouth gaping widely. He even had his tongue hanging out in astonishment. Don't blame him for losing his composure. He knew very well how astronomically difficult it was to cultivate body arts to the extent of level 10 precious metal precisely because he was a prodigy. The sea race was powerful, right? All of them had a bloodline, especially the royal clans. With their true dragon bloodline, not only were their chances of breaking through to the shattering void tier greatly increased, they were all cultivators of body arts at the same time and possessed tough physiques. In a battle between opponents of equal cultivation level, they could absolutely claim the upper hand. But there were very few rulers of the sea race that could reach the extent of level 10 precious metal in terms of their physique. Breaching this gap was much too difficult. Not only did one need to be of the true dragon bloodline, the purity level also had to be extremely high. For example, the Four Seas ruling clan, the Ao clan, had 2 to 3 people who had managed to cultivate their physique to this level. Additionally, that alternative dragon of the ghostly dragon cave was also a unique case. His ancestral bloodline was very pure, and he had managed to reach this level before. Why couldn't that alternative dragon be killed even when immortals descended to the lower realm? Simple, that was because his physique had reached the toughness of level 10 precious metal. It was too difficult to kill him. The owner of such a physique could only be slowly refined after being subdued. However, that alternative dragon had had a battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, so how could he allow anyone to slowly refine him to death? Ling Han was currently only in the deity transformation tier, yet his physique had reached the level of level 10 precious metal. How could one not lose composure in the face of this reality? Su Xiuran sighed internally. His defeat in Ling Han's hands wasn't the least bit undeserved. If he could actually slash through the ladder, then level 10 precious metal would really be too cheap, wouldn't it? The Beast Snake King had lived for so many years, and was one of the strongest elites of the current era. Thus, he naturally was the type not to even blink if the sky collapsed. He looked coldly at Ling Han, and said, "I have really never imagined that your physique has actually reached this level. Old Beast Snake, do you still want to kill me?" After Ling Han had swept himself clean of the dust on his body, he once again soared to stand in midair. In truth, the toughness of one's physique was only a characteristic trait of the Indestructible Heaven Scroll. Its stronger trait was its recovery abilities. Even if someone with the body of diamond lost a limb, he would be able to regrow it automatically, but had absolutely no need to circulate the Indestructible Heaven Scroll for that. How frightening was that? Naturally, he was not about to tell this to his opponent. The Beast Snake King sneered, and said, "You merely have a slightly tougher physique. It is fine even if I temporarily cannot wound you. I merely have to capture and bring you back to be slowly refined. 1 year, 10 years. I will manage to refine you completely eventually. The things I lack the least is patience and time. Can you capture me?" Ling Han pointed with a finger. Instantly, the Beast Snake King felt displeased. What level of existence was he, and when had he ever seen anyone point at him like so? He was immediately going to make his move, but his hand had just raised, when he abruptly stiffened, and called out, "Your Honor, please reveal yourself to see me." "What if I don't want to see you?" Shuang's laid-back voice was heard. "Then please do not interfere, Your Honor. This is the will of the 5 great sects." The Beast Snake King humphed. "Little earthworms, who knows how many I have trampled to death previously? You actually dare to be insolent in front of me?" Shuang said haughtily. She still did not appear. "I do not want to become enemies with that big earthworm either. Just get lost so that I will not be called a bully in the future." "Your Honor, your boasting is a bit too exaggerated," the Beast Snake King countered with a sneer. He was one of the strongest elites of the current era, with battle prowess reaching 12 stars of shattering void tier. Those that could match him in this world were really numbered. There was no need to mention those monsters of the Purple Moon Empire. All of them knew 4 to 5 mystical powers, and could make use of power of the nation too, so their battle prowess exceeded even 15 stars. "Are you getting lost or not?" Shuang rebuked directly. The Beast Snake King took a deep breath. It was obvious that she was a shattering void tier elite. There was no need to doubt this. However, how much battle prowess did she possess? At this time, the war with the Purple Moon Empire was very difficult. If they had another enemy of the shattering void tier, that would be an additional burden. It was best not to add another enemy to their enemies' ranks unless he had confidence to kill her here. However, they were both in the shattering void tier, so if one of them wanted to flee, there was still a high chance of accomplishing this. In the worst-case scenario, they could ignite their life source, and they could manage to explode with enough speed that not even descended immortals could manage to catch up to them. "All right. I will only take this junior with me," he called out, pointing at Ling Han. "No way." Shuang refused decisively. "Your Honor, you are too tyrannical," the Beast Snake King countered coldly. Did she really think he was afraid of her? Shuang broke out into laughter, and said, "I have always been tyrannical. You don't like it? If you're capable of it, then come and fight me. See how I shall deal with you." The Beast Snake King trembled in rage. This woman was really too much of a ruffian. He paid her no more attention, and instead stretched out a hand to grab Ling Han. Since he could not smack this monster to death, he would capture him, and bring him back to be suppressed. With such physique, he could completely be treated as a human-shaped alchemical pill. Once refined, he would definitely be very nutritious. "How dare you!" A slender hand smacked out. It enlarged endlessly, blocking the large hand that the Beast Snake King had stretched out. Peng, the 2 palms collided, and instantly formed a visible ripple that surged out in all directions in midair. Wang. Immediately, a semicircular light shield appeared over the imperial capital below them. The force of this shock wave caused it to tremble and look like it was about to be destroyed. Pa. There were a few places that had cracked. The shock wave instantly caused tremendous damage. Thankfully, because this light shield was there, the imperial capital was only shaken. Otherwise, it would definitely have been completely leveled. Shattering void tier was too powerful. In midair, a light shield also appeared over that battleship. The ship swayed and shook as if it was floating on water and had been affected by waves. Shuang, don't fight him here. My imperial capital will be destroyed. Ling Han called out. That defensive light shield was actually formed by that image of the black tower above the imperial capital. This was the amazing use of power of the nation. If he could solidly unify the whole north region, the defenses formed would probably be so strong that not even the Beast Snake King would be able to breach them. Shuang's figure flashed out, and was already standing in midair. She flipped her hair in displeasure, and said, "Brat, you've gotten brave, haven't you? You actually dare to order me around? Milady, please suppress this old snake." "Is that better?" Ling Han asked, smiling. Though it's not really all that earnest, I have a very helpful personality. There's nothing for it, so I'll just help you this once. Shuang turned to look at the beast snake king, and showed off a gorgeous smile. Little worm, if you don't leave, you really won't have any more chances to. Who are you, Your Honor? The beast snake king looked at Shuang with utmost seriousness. He actually could not identify the level of her cultivation. This meant that her cultivation level was not beneath his. It was definitely impossible for her to exceed him in cultivation level, though. In this realm, the maximum was the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier unless it was a descended immortal. Chapter 8:18, Forced to Retreat. Me? Shuang giggled. I am naturally the #1 beauty of this world. Nonsense, that's Niu. Hu Niu mumbled from below. However, at this moment, no one would pay attention to what she was saying. The beast snake king stared fixedly at Shuang as if he could distinguish something just from looking at her. After quite a while, he finally said, I will definitely take away this man with me today. Then you will have to prepare, for you will be leaving your life here, Shuang said casually. Even when facing a being like the beast snake king, she was still very casual. But the calmer she was, the more the beast snake king dared not be careless. In the past, he would definitely be very confident, but with the appearance of the Purple Moon Empire, he finally knew what the words, in the wider world, there would always be people more talented, meant. Merely the 8 kings were enough to thrash them fully. This woman, could she also be some old monster from some era long past? Shuang could not help but raise a brow, and asked, Are you guessing internally that I am an old monster from some past era? You really are a monster, ah. The beast snake king exclaimed inside his heart. A slight change of expression appeared on his face unconsciously. You actually dare to call me an old monster, you damn earthworm, you're really asking to be beaten. Shuang was infuriated, and immediately shot towards the beast snake king. The beast snake king dared not be careless, and quickly became serious, stepping up to receive her. Pang. As the two battled, they continued to soar up into the skies. Thus, though the shock waves from the battle were still gushing out wildly, they managed to miss the area the imperial capital was in. Ling Han nodded quietly. It looked like Shuang did not just know how to fool around. He leaped up, and watched the battle from a nearby location. In this world, aside from others at the Shattering Void tier, only he was qualified to watch the exchange of blows between 2 Shattering Void tier elites at a near distance. Fight! Hu Niu appeared beside him, clapping her little hands. Right, he forgot that there was still a little monster. After a few moves, the beast snake king looked somber, but was reassured internally. She was indeed very strong, and not the slightest bit inferior to him. However, she was not stronger than him. After all, there were still more ordinary people in this world. Maniacs like those in the Purple Moon Empire were, after all, not commonplace. Your Honor, I admit that you are indeed very strong. However, you are still not qualified to stand against the 5 sections. I advise you to stop while you can. Otherwise, all your lifetime's cultivation will become wasted effort, the Beast Snake King advised. The battle prowess of both parties were about equal. In a battle to the death, either of them could die. Additionally, he was still waiting to enter into the immortal realm after the reckoning and become an immortal. With such a wonderful future ahead of him, how could he be willing to die? Ha, ignorant fool. I didn't show my might, and you really think you're something awesome, don't you? Shuang asked, smiling. She bared her teeth, and 2 blood-colored wings instantly appeared behind her back. No. They should not really be considered wings. They had neither feathers nor scales, but rather were very thin wings made of flesh, similar to a bat's. You, who exactly are you? The Beast Snake King was no longer calm. The moment she spread out her wings, her aura instantly spiked wildly, immediately dominating over his. This caused him to recall the Lunar King and the others. Instantly, a powerful shadow arose inside his heart. He had been dealing with those 8 freaks these few days, so even if he wanted to forget them, he was not able to. You think you're worthy to know? Shuang asked disdainfully. She struck out with a palm, and all of a sudden, uncountable stars fell from the skies. A hole was actually ripped in the skies. 15 stars of battle prowess, definitely 15 stars. Without a second word, the Beast Snake King turned around directly and fled. In the shattering void tier, a gap of a single star would mean the difference between heaven and earth. That would mean definite defeat of the weaker party. Moreover, his battle prowess was only 12 stars, which meant a gap of whole 3 stars of battle prowess. That would mean she could easily dominate him with a mere flip of her hand. Flee, flee, flee. He returned to the battleship, and hurriedly stimulated the vessel into movement whilst turning on its defenses. With him, as well as the defenses of the Absolute Saber, they should probably be able to cut out a path of blood for their survival. Shuang had no plan to pursue him either. She withdrew her wings and gave a lazy stretch, showing off her attractive figure in full view. Hunyo pouted. With a frown, she said, "Vixen." What she hated the most were those women who had shapely figures showing off in front of her. Ling Han pointed at the battleship in front of them, and asked, "Why aren't you pursuing?" "I only promised to help you watch over your home, but never said I would be fighting off robbers for you." Shuang giggled. Changing the topic, she said, "If you want me to move, it's not impossible, but what benefits would you give me?" "We're friends, so wouldn't mentioning benefits be too dirty?" Ling Han asked in a righteous tone. "Hey, don't try this trick with me. If you tell me all your secrets, I can move and level whatever 5 sects and Purple Moon Empire to the ground. How about it?" Shuang offered temptingly. Ling Han gave a ha and retorted, "In your dreams. The 5 sects have such strong foundations, so who knows how many more awesome characters they still have. As for the Purple Moon Empire, though Fatty Ma has never acted before, his power should be frighteningly strong to be able to command the 8 kings. I'm also very powerful, all right?" Shuang countered, displeased. "Your current battle prowess is, at most, only 15 stars. And you want to sweep aside all opposition in the world? Difficult." Ling Han shook his head. "After another few years, perhaps Helian Tianyun will be able to return to the peak, and with 20 stars of shattering void tier, I'll ask you again if you will be afraid?" Shuang humphed and said, "If I had not been restricted by this realm, and if I couldn't only use 10,000th of my abilities, that would be enough to sweep through this whole realm." "Isn't that nonsense? There are so many in the immortal realm, and any of the immortals would be able to do so there is no need to trouble you." A vein popped on Shuang's forehead, and she exclaimed, "Brat, do you believe I will thrash you first? Don't think that just because you have a tough physique, I don't have ways to refine high-grade well-tempered steel into soft matter." Ling Han did not plan to provoke this demonic woman too much either, and said, "Hee, the weather is not too bad today. Nice breeze and warm sun. Let's just have some tea." "Tea is not nice, let's eat meat." Hunyo immediately piped up. Shuang could not help but laugh and said, "For Hunyo's sake, I won't bother to drop to your level. However, you'd better note down in a little book how many times have I helped you so far. You will have to repay the favor in future." Ling Han sighed, and said, "People always say you should never wish for your kindness to be repaid. Why is your understanding so poor? You don't like it? Come bite me." Shuang puffed out her chest, and her full breasts instantly surged forth. "Do not show off your breasts in front of Nyo." Hunyo was anxious. Why did all of them have to pick on her small size? What? The 3 of them were just planning to descend to the ground when they saw a carriage coming from afar. However, it was not traveling on the ground, but rather in the air. The being drawing the carriage was actually a demonic beast of the shattering void tier. It had the shape of a lion, and the aura it exuded was enough to make the world crack. Shuang immediately frowned. This time, a powerful enemy had come. Her eyes passed over that demonic beast in the shattering void tier as if she could see through the obstruction and see directly into the carriage. The person sitting within was the real powerful enemy. Chapter 8:19, Lunar King battles Shuang. Yet Ling Han raised his clasped hands smilingly, and greeted, "Lord Lunar King has arrived, apologies for not coming out to greet you." Jejejej. An incredibly seductive bout of laughter spread out from within the carriage, causing those who heard it to feel as if they had been stroked by uncountable small hands. Slightly itchy, and a bit silky. Huge vixen. Shuang and Hunyao declared at the same time. The carriage door opened, and a voluptuous, incredibly seductive beauty walked out. In terms of looks, Shuang could match her, but in terms of bearing, though Shuang was graceful as well, when compared with the former, she paled. This was an extraordinary inborn beauty. She was born to enchant the whole world, a real calamity. It was naturally no other than the Lunar King. "Yo, little brother," the Lunar King greeted gracefully, then with hands on her hips, put on an incredibly seductive pose. Anyone who saw her would blush. "Look, haven't I become younger and more beautiful?" Ling Han's initial understanding of women was on the level of an idiot. That was why he'd only realized that the heavenly phoenix divine maiden actually liked him only after a millennium had passed. But as he was in intimate contact with Hellion Sun Shui, there was naturally a little improvement to his understanding. "And, the Lunar King is indeed younger and more beautiful as days pass," he complimented. This great Vivin had once gotten into a fight with Ma Duobao over the issue of her youth. Thus, he definitely had to go along with her on this matter. The current him was quite capable of withstanding a beating, but with an elite on the level of the Lunar King, even if she could not kill him in a single move, it probably wouldn't be all that difficult for her to give him an agonizing beating. The Lunar King was instantly all smiles. Then, she turned to look at Shuang, and asked, "May I ask how should I address you, big sister?" "I would not dare to be any big sister." Shuang's beautiful face instantly cooled. "From what I see, you are much older than me." "How could that be? One look at that skin, and I know that big sister is definitely at least a few millennia older than me." The Lunar King really dared to say whatever she wanted. A vein immediately popped on Shuang's forehead, yet she still smiled, and said, "I heard you guys have been buried for more than 20 millennia. TSK, that would be much older than me, so you are the real big sister." No, not big sister, but rather grandma." The Lunar King giggled delicately, and said, "I only napped for a short while. With time source fluid to slow down the passage of time on my body, I have only slept a few years at most. I would not dare be treated as a grandmother, so I had best return the respectful address to big sister." "Big sister. You are the big sister here, your whole family are big sisters." The two women glared at each other as their temper flared up. Ling Han really didn't understand. It was only an address, so what was so important about it? Looking at the way these two women were acting, they seemed to be ready to immediately start a fight. Hiss, that destructive power would definitely exceed the time when Shuang was fighting the Beast Snake King previously. It could practically be claimed to be on another level. Yet Hunyao was ecstatic, and said quietly, fight quickly, it's best that both of them are beaten to death." Ling Han advised, "Lord Lunar King, your long journey must have been difficult. Why not come down for a cup of tea? Get lost." Both women moved at the same time, and bang, Ling Han was struck flying over 100 miles away. Fuck, he was merely trying to stop the fight, so why did he have to suffer this absurd disaster? "Come, let me take a look at your abilities." "Jejej, that is precisely my intention." The two women once again rose up into the air, and began a furious battle. It looked like these two women had not completely lost their wits, and still knew to avoid damaging the imperial capital below them. However, from the first moment, they were completely showing off their ultimate moves, and engaged in an extremely ferocious battle in midair. Blood devours world. 8 Lunar techniques. In the exchange of blows between the two women, they were instantly shooting out powerful moves, making for an incredibly terrifying display. Ling Han was awed. This was the real battle prowess of the Shattering Void tier. In comparison, the Beast Snake King was practically a kid. Both their battle prowess should be about 15 stars, just about the same with the 15-eyed Corpse King and the giant Silver Spider. There is obviously only a gap of 3 stars of battle prowess, but they are so much stronger than the Beast Snake King. I really can't imagine how terrifying that old dragon, with 20 stars of battle prowess, would be. Ling Han mumbled. However, since there could appear one person with 20 stars of battle prowess, why couldn't there appear a second or a third? Who knew whether the 5 sects had sealed away this kind of elites or not? Hopefully not. After fighting for a while, the air suddenly became silent. The Lunar King and Shuang both descended. There were a few rips and tears in their clothes, revealing their snow-white skin. One could even get a glimpse of the erotic beauty hidden inside. However, the two women also immediately drew out a cloak from their spatial spirit tools each, so Ling Han could no longer have an eyeful. If I could use my full abilities, a single finger would be enough to crush you. Shuang's anger had still not abated. Yet the Lunar King smiled, and said, "You are indeed from the immortal realm. However, with the restriction of the realm, you only have 15 stars of battle prowess, which means that you had only reached 15 stars before you broke through in the past, and that's not stronger than me." Ling Han was confused, and interrupted, "Should it not be that descended immortals have 20 stars of battle prowess?" Shuang shook her head, and said, "The restrictions of the realm are not calculated so simply. In truth, the maximum limit this realm can accommodate is the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, but whatever battle prowess you can reach at the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier would depend on your own talent." Ling Han finally understood, and said, "So it's that your cultivation level has been suppressed to the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and not that your battle prowess is suppressed to 20 stars of Shattering Void tier." There was a big difference between the two. For example, both Helion Rong and Wenren Jia were in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, but one only had 10 stars of battle prowess, and the other 11. If the both them had a duel to death, Helion Rong would be very quickly killed by Wenren Jia. He would not even be qualified to take Wenren Jia down with him. That was precisely the reason why even descended immortals could not suppress Helion Tianyun those years ago. That old dragon had reached a battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier at the time, and that was indeed enough to sweep aside all opposition in this realm. "Oh, right, Lunar King, with the war so tense in the middle state, why have you come here?" Ling Han hurriedly changed the topic, not wanting these two women to begin bickering or even get into a fight again. "Oh, the 5 sects. They have already lost once to us before, and nothing will change the second time," the Lunar King said very loftily. "We heard you've established your nation, so with a suggestion of His Majesty, I came to help you train your armies." "That would really be great." Ling Han was pleasantly surprised. He had only secretly learned a few tricks of training soldiers from the Purple Moon Empire, but it was far from claiming to be skilled. "Jejij, then how are you planning to repay me, little brother?" The Lunar King smiled flirtatiously and gracefully. "You're not allowed to have designs on Ling Han." Hu Niu immediately stepped out in front of Ling Han, stretching out her arms widely, looking like she was protecting her food. The Lunar King instantly laughed raucously. She shook and swayed in her laughter, displaying her shapely figure in full view, causing both Hu Niu and Shuang to inwardly call her Big Vixen at the same time. The Big Vixen would not be staying for long. She had brought with her 100-person army, and they were all elites amongst elites. Not only were they skilled in training soldiers, their personal abilities were also very powerful, and they were enough to help the Great Ling Empire conquer both the east and south regions. Thus, the Lunar King invited Ling Han to head to the Middle State. The war with the 5 sects was soon to begin, and even Ma Duobao might move in person. Chapter 820, Return of the Demon Emperor. Ling Han gave it some consideration, and accepted the Lunar King's invitation to head to the Middle State. There would not be much use for him to stay here anyways, as there were absolutely no hostile elites here that needed him to step out. And in the case of the Sea race, Hellion Tianyun could practically cope with all of them. Then, there were only the 5 sects of the Middle State that had to be dealt with. This was the most important priority. Without eliminating the 5 sects, what use was there to talk of splitting open the skies? After Ling Han made some arrangements, he prepared to set out. Hellion Sun Shui was definitely going to stay behind to handle national affairs. Thus, Ling Han only brought Zhu Xian Heir, Hunyo, Rabbit, and Gold-Seeking Rat with him. With Shuang overseeing things, he was not afraid that someone would ransack his lair. Kakaka, where is Ling Han? They had yet to depart when they heard a sinister, spooky laughter ring out. A mysterious person hidden completely under a cloak appeared above the imperial capital. Ling Han could not help but wear a strange expression, and said, "What's going on here? Shattering Void Tear is a bit too cheap, isn't it? Why do they appear so often here?" This mysterious person was definitely in the Shattering Void Tier. The aura exuded by them was incredibly astonishing, forcefully ripping through the air. Ling Han soared up into the air, looked at the mysterious person for a while, then suddenly exclaimed, "You are the Azura Demon Emperor. Kakaka, brat, your eyes are not that bad." The mysterious man flipped open his cloak, revealing a tall, sturdy man. He had regular features, with a beard as sharp as a steel needle. The Azura Demon Emperor did not have a physical body. Whichever person his demonic chi enshrouded, he would become that person. Thus, there was no way to kill him. That was why he had been split into 9 parts and suppressed separately. However, the current Azura Demon Emperor was really strong. Merely looking at him, Ling Han felt pain as if his eyes were about to crack. 15 stars of the Shattering Void Tier? Fuck, the ultimate elites in today's world were all cheap, weren't they? Appearing one after another. Years ago, the Lunar King and her 7 companions were enough to sweep aside all opposition in the world, which was proof that 15 stars of Shattering Void Tier was the topmost tier of this world. Yet now, there had already appeared a number of people with 15 stars of Shattering Void Tier. Aside from the 8 kings, there were still the 15-eyed Corpse King, the giant Silver Spider, and Shuang at least. And now, there was an Azura Demon Emperor. You retrieved all your 9 parts? Ling Han guessed. It was practically impossible for the Azura Demon Emperor to have battle prowess exceeding 15 stars when he was intact. If he had had it, how would he have been defeated and split into 9 parts? Kaka, that's right. The Azura Demon Emperor stared fixedly at Ling Han, his eyes filled with extreme fury. Each of the 9 parts existed individually, but after merging, all their memories would be combined and belong to one person. To him, this human was extremely detestable. At the time, he tricked him into possessing a Chaos Source rock that was practically ready to be scrapped, almost condemning him to eternal damnation. Thankfully, the 9 parts could meld into each other. He had been found by his other parts, swallowed, and only then did he manage to break out of the Chaos Source rock. Otherwise, his maximum ability would only be in the Flower Blossom tier. Hand over the Chaos Source rock, he commanded harshly. For an existence like him, the Chaos Source rock was the best vessel, as well as the biggest opportunity. It was more precious than any amazing alchemical pill or any ultimate cultivation technique. Ling Han shrugged, and said, "Sorry, but it's long gone. Why don't I just give you some random rock? Don't be disdainful, after all, what rock is not a rock? You still dare to act stubborn." The Azura Demon Emperor humphed. He absolutely did not believe that Ling Han was capable of refining the Chaos Source rock in such a short period of time. This was an absolutely impossible thing to happen. It was impossible to accomplish even in a few millennia, what more when only a few years had passed. That was not a treasure that could be used by a mortal. You're not handing it over? He laughed weirdly. That's all right. I merely need to possess your body, and your everything would belong to me. Possession, for him, was a piece of cake. His original form was a stream of demonic qi. Ling Han became serious internally. His physique could withstand any blow from the shattering void tear, but what about his soul? This Azura demon emperor posed a huge threat to him. Obediently deliver all you have to me. The Azura demon emperor stretched out a hand, grabbing out in Ling Han's direction. Pung! Pung! Right at this moment, two beautiful fists shot out at the same time, simultaneously landing on the Azura demon emperor's face. A terrifying force exploded, instantly sending the Azura demon emperor flying. The Azura demon emperor regained his footing. His whole face had completely caved in, and the back of his head was protruding slightly, looking incredibly strange. If this had been another person, he would definitely have died. However, the Azura demon emperor merely stretched out a hand and smacked the back of his head. Pa! The caved-in face immediately bounced back out. Only his features had been misshapen due to the compression, looking very weird. This was so disgusting it would make one vomit. Yet, the Azura demon emperor completely did not take it to heart. Instead, he gave out a cold aura, and said, I never thought that there would be two powerful beings here that are not inferior to me. If you know what's good for you, get lost quickly, the Lunar King said lazily. Kakaka, if you want to chase me away, you would have to have that kind of ability. The Azura demon emperor licked his lips. I have never possessed the body of a woman before, and I suddenly feel very interested in doing so. The Lunar King's beautiful face instantly froze over. She said, you actually dare to have designs on me? You're really looking for death. She immediately charged out, beginning a series of berserk attacks on the Azura demon emperor. Previously, the Azura demon emperor had been suddenly beaten by the two women. Aside from that, he had also been careless as he had never imagined that the tiny Great Ling Empire would actually have two elite cultivators of the shattering void tier standing by here. Of course, more importantly, his original form was demonic qi, so he absolutely would not care whether his vessel would be wounded or damaged. He could just switch to another body, right? You have quite a good body, I am definitely claiming it. The Azura demon emperor cackled as he continued to parry the Lunar King's barrage of attacks. 8 lunar techniques. The Lunar King used her ultimate move, her whole head of black locks dancing wildly. A divine saber took form behind her, slashing towards the Azura demon emperor. Xiao, after a single slash, another divine saber formed, and continued to slash again. Ah, the Azura demon emperor exclaimed in shock. You have actually formed power of regulation. It was as if he had had some unfathomable experience, his tone filled with terror. Hung, you evil thing from the netherworld, the thing you fear the most would be the restriction of the realm, and the power of regulation is given form by the powers of the realm. It is the perfect thing to suppress you. The Lunar King delivered unceasing blows. The Azura demon emperor grunted endlessly. His cultivation level far exceeded the shattering void tier, and so he had naturally formed power of regulation as well, but his power of regulation had been cultivated in the netherworld, and completely could not fit into this realm. His power was very strong, but without the support from the world, how could he stand against the power of regulation of this realm? Damn it! Damn it! The Azura demon emperor was repeatedly forced into retreat with the barrage of blows. Fighting with the Lunar King was equivalent to him being suppressed by the powers of the realm. This was too great a disadvantage to him. After a few more rounds, he finally gave up the battle, turned around, and left. Brat, unless you are planning to hide beside these two women forever, I will definitely occupy your body, and take over everything you own. He tossed out a line that fitted the situation. Ling Han sneered coldly. When he broke through to the shattering void tier, he would use his sword heart illumination and kill this great demon. Chapter 821, Arriving at Cold City. After this little interlude, Ling Han and the Lunar King set out on their journey. Very soon, they arrived outside the regional barrier, yet discovered that the regional wall no longer existed. I found it troublesome, so I shattered it, the Lunar King stated calmly. Strong. After that reckoning 10,000 years ago, this should be something that the group from the immortal realm helped to construct, but she actually dismantled it, which was proof enough of how powerful this big vixen was. They traveled unimpeded, and could see that this was already the territory of the Purple Moon Empire. The city ahead had already raised the national flag of the Purple Moon Empire, which looked very grand. Another 10 days later, they had arrived at the capital city of the Purple Moon Empire. Ma Duobao came out personally to receive them, which was giving Ling Han enough face. Why do you look so highly on me, brother Ma? Ling Han asked in confusion. With his abilities, even if the sect leaders of all the 5 great sects came here, he did not even need to give them a second glance. Ma Duobao laughed heartily. My tanned brother, I have never looked wrongly on a person. You are fated to stir up the winds of destiny. Your achievements will definitely not be lower than mine. Ling Han was feeling extremely pleased internally. He was also confident that he would be able to gain unprecedented accomplishments in the future, but before he reached this height, he was already treated as an equal by someone whose abilities were far superior to his. This naturally made him feel very comfortable. However, Brother Ma, can you not call me your tanned brother anymore? All right, my tanned brother. Ma Duobao readily accepted, yet he was the standard type to never change his ways. Ling Han was rendered momentarily speechless. After a while, he finally said, Brother Ma, I can offer you some suggestions on the usage of power of the nation. Oh, tell me about it. Ma Duobao did not take Ling Han lightly. Ling Han relayed all the information he had heard from Shuang, causing Ma Duobao to immediately sink into deep thought. Sire, so the fact we failed at splitting open the skies the last time was your fault? The Lunar King cracked her knuckles. You damn fatty, you are indeed unreliable. Ma Duobao hurriedly raised his hands in surrender, and said, even if I had learnt the correct method the last time, we would still have failed. Why? The Lunar King turned a dangerous look on Ma Duobao, but did not move to attack. Ma Duobao sighed, and said, even last time, I was almost filled to bursting point with power of the nation. Even if it was possible to increase power of the nation tenfold, would not be able to bear it. The Lunar King stared blankly. After a while, she suddenly leaped up. She grabbed onto Ma Duobao's face, and exclaimed, you turned yourself into a damn fatty. Are you cultivating some kind of weird cultivation technique to increase your tolerance level? My beloved subject is indeed clever. Ma Duobao had been squeezed into deformation, but he was still very amiable, and laughed. At that time, we did not unify the seas, yet I had already reached my limit, so I did not command you all to set out on an expedition against the seas. Unfortunately, my ability was still not enough to split open the skies. Therefore, I recultivated my physique to be capable of bearing stronger power of the nation this time. All of a sudden, the Lunar King's hands drooped and she stamped her feet as she said, give me back my handsome, suave sire. Though looking at a fatty for a longer period of time makes it easier on the eyes, but how could it compare to how suave the original sire looked like? She immediately scrambled over to Ling Han's side, grabbed him, and said viciously, little brother, you definitely must not follow that damn fatty. I do not want to see another damn fatty. Ling Han hurriedly raised his hands, smiled, and said, of course, of course. He indeed did not want to become a damn fatty either. But what cultivation technique was Ma Duobao actually cultivating that it used the fattening of one's body to increase the toughness of his physique? After improvement, perhaps merely the power of the nation of the middle state would be enough to fill me to bursting point. Ma Duobao rubbed his chin. From Ling Han's experience, building the totem before congealing the will of the people would be enough to increase power of the nation by tenfold. After all, the middle state was the haven of martial arts. A single state was enough to match 4 regions combined, so if power of the nation was increased another tenfold, the effects would definitely be double or even triple when he united the whole mainland. Although his physique had been improved, but was it twice or thrice stronger than before? We'll just try and see. Ma Duobao immediately began constructing the totem. This symbolized the image of the whole nation, so he had to consider carefully. Now, the Purple Moon Empire had already occupied over 90% of the actual land of the Middle State. Only small parts the 5 great sects were occupying had yet to change their flag. However, the 5 sects' territories were not far from one another, so they could support each other. It was very, very difficult if they wanted to conquer any of them. Such a small place, yet there were gathered over 100 shattering void-tier elites. There were also powerful ultimate tools like the Absolute Saber and the Mountain and River Axe, so they were definitely not easy opponents. It was necessary for Ma Duo Bao to act personally. The final major battle was not far. Taking advantage of this time before the final battle began, Ling Han decided to make a trip to Cold City. There were 2 Cold Spear associations there, which were connected to a few of his disciples, so he needed to clarify things. He brought Zhu Xian'er, Hunyou, and the others and set out. A few days later, they arrived at Cold City. Before that, Ling Han only knew that the Cold Spear Association was in Cold City, but he did not have a very clear memory of where exactly Cold City was. It lasted only until the moment he arrived here, when he could not help but look distracted as if he had transmigrated through time and returned to the past. Cold City was Eternal Light's city of 10,000 years ago, and also the place where he had lived. He had never thought that after 10,000 years, this city would still remain, and had not been destroyed. Ling Han could still recognize some broken parts of the city walls, and they were no different from 10,000 years ago. Ling Han, what's the matter? Hunyou asked, tugging at his hand. Nothing. Ling Han smiled, and walked into the city holding onto Hunyou's hand. He was heading straight for the Cold Spear Association. However, there were 2 Cold Spear Associations in Cold City. One was in the south of the city, and was named the Southern Spear Association, whereas the other was in the north, and so was called the Northern Spear Association. The 2 Cold Spear Associations both claimed that they were the real Cold Spear Association, and were frequently involved in tussles with each other, nursing an unending feud between them. Ling Han had come in from the Eastern Gate, so it was about the same distance whichever Cold Spear Association he went to. He took out a copper coin, and smiled. If it's heads, we'll head to the Southern Spear Association, and if it's tails, we'll head to the Northern Spear Association. In the end, it was tails. He walked neither too fast nor too slow. However, the city was only so big, so he arrived at the Northern Spear Association not long later. I want to see someone who can speak up around here, Ling Han said to the guard standing at the entrance. Who are you? The guard retorted, his face wearing a disdainful smile. This was natural. If any random person could just come over and demand to see their boss, what did they think their boss was? Ling Han smiled, and said, My name is Ling Han. Just go ahead and announce it just like that. Ling Han. The guard started. The members of the Cold Spear Association naturally understood. The purpose they existed was to gather anything related to Ling Han, obtaining them at all costs. Of course, this Ling Han was the Alchemy Emperor of 10,000 years ago, and not this young man in front of him. In the hearts of every member of the Cold Spear Association, the Ling Han from 10,000 years ago was a supreme existence. He was like a god that could not have sacrilege committed against him, and this man actually dared call himself Ling Han as well. This was too despicable. He gave Ling Han a look, and said, All right, I will go in and announce you. Hang, if he did not call out elites to beat this guy so hard that his own mother wouldn't recognize him, there would be something wrong with him. Chapter 822, A Joker Everywhere. Ling Han waited at the doors. So many years had already passed anyways, so he would not mind waiting just this while longer. Meanwhile, Hunyou was kicking stones out of boredom. Pa, pa, pa. She seemed to have gotten a little addicted, and her kicks gradually became stronger. Finally, she had gotten into trouble. Aya, who is it that dares to ambush me? A young man walked out, one hand holding his forehead. He was baring his teeth in pain, his features completely twisted from the pain. The moment Hunyou spotted him, she immediately stuck out her tongue and hid behind Ling Han. Then she stretched out a hand to point at Zhu Xian'er, and said, "It's that woman who threw stones at you." Niu saw very clearly. Who would suspect a child? That young man followed Hu Niu's hand and turned to look at Zhu Xian'er. He was just about to fly into a rage, but a dazed expression immediately appeared on his face. This woman was a bit too beautiful, wasn't she? Her beauty was practically in the top of the whole cold city, and no other would be able to match her. All of a sudden, it seemed as if his forehead did not ache anymore. He hurriedly put on a smile that he personally thought was his most suave expression, and said, "I am Feng Yishou. May I know your beautiful name, miss?" Zhu Xian'er merely gave him an indifferent gaze, and said, "We are only strangers coming together by chance, absolute strangers, so there is no need to exchange names." "How unique, I like it." Feng Yishou mumbled, his face turning to the side. Then, he turned his head back round, his smile even brighter than before. Being able to meet in a sea of people, how could this not be a kind of destiny? "Miss, your beauty is much too brilliant, my eyes can only see you." Zhu Xian'er directly ignored him so that he would not make use of his advantageous position and continue to be a pest. "Miss, your beauty is a poison, but I will endure the suffering gladly. You have conquered me, please allow me to use my remaining life to love and pamper you." Feng Yishou blurted one romantic line after another. He was definitely a veteran of the love scene. He didn't even repeat a single line. From his handsome appearance along with his sweet mouth, there were definitely innumerable women who would willingly jump into his gentle and soft trap. Unfortunately, this did not have the slightest effect on Zhu Xian'er. On the other hand, her expression became colder and colder. "You're reading on novel full thanks. Idiot, why are you spouting so much nonsense? Just knock her unconscious and carry her home." Hu Niu really could not bear looking anymore, and jumped out to offer him ideas. "That wouldn't be proper, right?" Feng Yishou rubbed his head as he smiled foolishly. "Believe Niu," Hu Niu declared, cheering him on. Feng Yishou clapped his hands once and exclaimed, "I'll do it." Ling Han laughed in spite of himself, and asked, "What do you want to do?" Feng Yishou instantly shivered, and exclaimed, "I have no interest in men, so don't speak dirty lines to me." Fuck, this guy was a joker, right? Ling Han laughed coldly, and said, "Since you've said so, then I will really have to play around with you." Don't you mess around, I am not that kind of person. Moreover, I am very powerful, so don't seek your own suffering. Feng Yishou quickly drew out his sword. "You are a pervert, don't come near me," was written all over his guarded expression. Ling Han extended a hand to grab the other man very casually. "Damn pervert, take this." Feng Yishou's sword shot out, and a sword ray swept past, slicing towards Ling Han's wrist. He really couldn't tell. Although this young man was unreliable for some reason, he was still quite skilled. There were not that many people that could form sword ray at this young age. However, compared with Ling Han, the two of them were on two completely different levels. Ling Han's hand changed course, and grabbed the other man's wrist. He laughed, and asked, "Just guess, will I be steaming or roasting you?" "Mother." Feng Yishou's whole body was covered with goosebumps. He hurriedly exerted force, wanting to break free. However, Ling Han's hand was like an iron cuff, and he could not even move a bit, and could only stare at him helplessly. "Don't call mother, call me big brother, and I'll let you go." Ling Han smiled. "You think you deserve to be called big brother by me?" Feng Yishou humphed. His left hand shook, and there actually appeared another sword, which quickly stabbed out at Ling Han. Ling Han loosened his grip, then once again grabbed out at Feng Yishou's left hand. Pa, he had grabbed it accurately. Feng Yishou was completely astonished. How could this man move so quickly? He released an angry roar, and his right hand slashed out again. He used his full power in this strike. Even his hair was sticking up like needles. His sword intent solidified, and ruthlessly shot out at Ling Han. Ling Han's physique was extremely tough, so his soul surely was not sturdy as well. With this strike from him, Ling Han would definitely grab his head and grunt in agony. There should be no such monster in this world that could cultivate both physique and soul to the ultimate peak. Ling Han smiled faintly. His sword heart moved, and Feng Yixio's sword intent collapsed immediately. He seemed to have suffered a great injury, and his whole face paled instantly. Even his expression was twisted, which made him look as if he was in incredible pain. Ling Han released his grip. Feng Yixio, meanwhile, was curled up on the ground. His whole body was twitching. This barrage to the soul was not a light attack. However, to him, this might possibly be a kind of grinding stone. If he could survive it, the toughness of his soul would definitely improve further. Young Master Feng. At this moment, two people walked out the doors. One was the guard that had gone in previously to make the announcement, and the other was a tall, slender old man. He looked to be in his 60s or 70s, and had a kind of bearing to him. However, at this moment, his whole expression was anxious. He shot out quickly right next to Feng Yixio, and helped him back to his feet. Upon closer examination, when he discovered that there was no injury on the latter's body, he finally calmed back down. The old man looked at Ling Han, his gaze chilly, and asked, "Are you the one who injured young Master Feng?" Ling Han laughed. The word injured is not really used accurately. The correct term is sparred with, and he was just not my match. "Humph, you came to our Cold Spear Association and still dare to cause injury, how dare you," the old man declared coldly. His right hand stretched out, and instantly turned green in color, exuding a metallic texture, with multiple patterns flickering on it. This old man was in the deity transformation tier, so his abilities were really not that low. Ling Han placed his hands behind his back, and said, "I see that your status should not be very low, and I shall ask you this question. Have you heard of the names Jiang Yufeng, Yin Yong Wang, Tang Xiu Yuan?" "Humph, there is no use even if you reveal a big background. Today, no one would be able to save you." The old man leaped out and delivered a strike at Ling Han. Peng, when his palm had yet to reach its target, the gale created by it had already smacked down. Origin power was compressed, so the destructive ability was very astonishing. Ling Han's right hand pressed out, and the old man was instantly sent flying. Peng, 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 peng. He forcefully burst through at least 10 walls before finally stopping, losing consciousness directly. This time, he should have really attracted enough attention, right? Teng, 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 a great many people raced out of the residence, surrounding Ling Han tightly, but none of them made a further move. Humph. A terrifying aura spread out, and a figure walked out. "Greetings, Seventh Elder." Everyone went down on one knee to pay their respects. He was a white-haired old man, but his spirit was hale and hearty, his eyes bright. He stared at Ling Han, and said, "Young man, you have admirable courage, actually daring to come to the Cold Spear Association and behave atrociously." "Behave atrociously?" Ling Han shook his head. "It was only self-defense. However, my patience is limited. If no one is willing to have a calm, peaceful discussion with me later, then I can only choose to turn this place of yours upside down so that you can all calm down." Chapter 823, Founder of the Cold Spear Association. "What big boasts, you are merely in the deity transformation tier." Seventh Elder sneered. "Young man, the stiffest tree is most easily cracked. You are too proud, so allow me to teach you how to properly behave." Ling Han retorted, "Your boasts are quite big as well. Don't become a frog at the bottom of a well and think that the world is only so big. You have to understand one thing, in the wider world, there will always be someone better than you." Ha 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 ha. Seventh Elder laughed scornfully in his anger. If the two of them switched their ages, then these words would be quite logical, but now, a young man was actually lecturing him, an old man, which rendered him practically speechless. His eyes froze over, he could not bother to continue the conversation with Ling Han. Otherwise, he would really die from fury, he directly stretched out a hand to grab Ling Han. He was in the heaven tier, so what could be easier than dealing with a junior in the deity transformation tier? Could it be that he had to purposely rise up into the skies for a fight? The other party would not be able to fight back at all, his only fate would be to be subdued in a single move from him, so it was naturally impossible to cause any collateral damage. His right hand grabbed out. The martial intent of the heaven tier surged, forming a terrifying pressure. Those deity transformation tier cultivators who were weaker might even directly be forced onto the ground under this tremendous pressure. Ling Han neither dodged nor avoided. In the eyes of the others, this was very ordinary. An ultimate elite of the heaven tier moved, so what chance would this brat have to dodge? With the pressure from the former's martial intent, he would only be qualified to wait to be captured, naturally. Just when this hand was about to grab him, Ling Han moved. He moved very quickly, and gave a flick to the old man's palm. All of a sudden, the seventh elder's expression changed. Though Ling Han's abilities were not as strong as his martial intent was extremely frightening. It seemed to be capable of penetrating directly into his body like a needle, stabbing him and causing him great pain. He took 7 steps back. When he raised his hand for a look, he realized his fingers were shaking so much that he couldn't even close them tightly into a fist. That was too terrifying. Was this young man a monster? A casual strike from him almost disintegrated his battle prowess. Why did 7th Elder stop? I don't know. I just saw 7th Elder charge over then retreat. Could it be that he managed to block 7th Elder's attack? Are you kidding me? What cultivation level is 7th Elder at? He's practically standing in the ranks of the strongest of this world, how could it be that he couldn't even deal with a youngster? The spectators discussed spiritedly. With their eyes, they naturally could not see clearly what had happened just now. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "How about it? Can we now sit down for a proper talk?" 7th Elder looked at Ling Han, and only after a long while said, "You are underestimating the Cold Spear Association too much. I can't stop you, but that does not mean that there's no one capable of stopping you." What? When they heard these words, everyone was stunned. How could they believe it? The 7th Elder was actually unable to stop this young man? This guy looked to be about 20 years old at most, so how could he be that powerful? Could it be that he was some old monster that had preserved his youthful looks? Ling Han smiled. "I can't bother to stay here and wait for you all to take turns in coming out." Once he said this, he began heading towards the residence. "Stop!" everyone shouted loudly. How could outsiders be qualified to enter into the Cold Spear Association? This was blasphemy. You all would not be able to stop him. Let him in, there will naturally be someone there to teach him proper behavior. 7th Elder said. Everyone nodded. The Cold Spear Association had no shortage of elites. Even if Heaven Tier cultivators could not stop Ling Han, how could it be that even Shattering Void Tier would not be able to as well? In a short while, banging sounds were heard from within. A fight should have happened inside, but it only continued for a while before silence returned. Another short while later, an old man ran out, his face bruised. "What, even 5th Elder has been defeated?" everyone exclaimed in shock. This young man was a little too strong. The 7th Elder hurriedly asked about his battle progress. How many moves had that Ling Han used to defeat old 5th? The 5th Elder's face was completely flushed. He paused for a while before finally saying, "I was beaten by a little girl who is about 10 years old." He actually wanted to add a few years to Hu Nyo's age so that his defeat would look slightly better. However, she was really too small, so he really couldn't add that many years. Pooh! Everyone choked. This was the 5th Elder here, and ability-wise, he was even stronger than the 7th Elder. But he had not only lost, he had lost to the little girl that they had seen just now. Who had not seen Hu Nyo? Still, who could have imagined that such a little snip of a girl was actually an elite as well? Pung! Sounds of battle were again heard from within. Similarly, not too long later, two old men ran out. Both of them were injured, and one of them had even had his face scratched. Third elder. Second elder. Everyone was astonished. Even these two elders had been defeated. They were known for the strongest battle prowess below the shattering void tier. But even that level of power could not match the intruders. Could it be that Ling Han and his group had battle prowess on the level of the shattering void tier? But when they asked, the two elders had been defeated respectively by Ling Han and Hun Yo, and there was not a bit of exaggeration about it. Hearing their answers, the whole area was silenced. Ha ha ha, I heard that someone barged into your false cold spear association. At this moment, over a dozen people walked over. The people in the lead were 3 old men, and behind them were 11 young people. If Ling Han was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that one of the young women was precisely Mu Fei Yao. Obviously, these people were from the Southern Spear Association. What nonsense, you all are the false Cold Spear Association, those belonging to the Northern Spear Association yelled. Which one was the real Cold Spear Association? This was a question of principle that surpassed all other matters, and was even more serious than the issue of Ling Han's intrusion into the residence. Rubbish, you members of the false Cold Spear Association are completely shameless. The Northern Spear Association side began retorting as well. Every time the two sides met up, they would be arguing over this issue for at least half a day. In the past, they had even gotten into a melee over the matter, and almost caused both sides to be destroyed. Thus, the two sides established an agreement. This cold city was their sacred land, and they definitely would not fight here. Because of Cold City's special status, the two Cold Spear Associations had even agreed that they would cooperate together in an effort to eliminate whomever dared to damage Cold City. Looks like you've come into some trouble. Do you want us to give you a hand? A member of the Southern Spear Association asked. Hang, we can settle it ourselves, and do not need the help of members of the false Cold Spear Association like you. The members of the Northern Spear Association were naturally unwilling to accept assistance. Otherwise, wouldn't they be admitting to being inferior to the other party? They had that kind of confidence as well because First Elder was an elite of the Shattering Void tier, the top elite of the Northern Spear Association. In the deepest parts of the residence, Ling Han was sitting cross-legged, facing an old man. In front of both of them, there was a cup of fragrant tea. Zhu Xian'er and Hun Yo, meanwhile, were seated behind Ling Han. Zhu Xian'er was still fine, maintaining the cultured and refined appearance and behavior of a well-bred young mistress. Hun Yo, however, could not sit down properly. She simply sprawled out on the floorboards, and supporting her little head, began spacing out. That old man was naturally the top elite of the Northern Spear Association, the First Elder. This First Elder was very mild-tempered, and did not immediately start fighting. Instead, he invited Ling Han to sit down for a cup of tea, and said, "Young friend, you are only 20 years old, yet has already reached this height. This talent is indeed very rarely seen, even in all of history. First Elder, thank you for the praise. I wanted to ask First Elder about some matter, and I hope First Elder can tell me," Ling Han said very politely. Respect went both ways. "What matter do you want to know about, young friend?" First Elder questioned. The founder of the Cold Spear Association. Chapter 824, Change of Name. The founder of the Cold Spear Association? The First Elder looked very confused. Why did Ling Han want to know about that? This was no secret martial arts technique, nor did it involve any ancient secret. Why had Ling Han deliberately come here just to ask this one question? No matter how he thought about it, this was a bit foolish. But how could it be that Ling Han was foolish or bored? First Elder pondered the question, then asked, "Can you tell me why you wanted to know about this?" Ling Han smiled faintly, and answered, "My ancestor could have some relation to the founder of the Cold Spear Association, so I wanted to clarify things." First Elder gave a yeah, and asked, "Your surname is Ling. Could it be that you are a descendant of that person?" Ling Han answered, "More or less." He was naturally not about to explain the details to him. He was not the descendant of the Ling Han from 10,000 years ago, but the person himself. There are a total of 3 founders of the Cold Spear Association, and they are Chen Rui Jing, Lord Chen, Yun Yong Wang, Lord Yun, and Tang Xiu Yuan, Lord Kong. First Elder replied very piously, brightness flickering in his eyes. Subconsciously, his hands had joined together, seeming to be worshipping these 3 people. Indeed. Then, the other Cold Spear Association must have been established by Jiang Yufeng. However, the 2 Cold Spear Associations were completely incompatible with each other. Could it be that some conflict had arisen between Jiang Yufeng and the other 3? Ling Han considered something for a moment, then asked, these 3, have they all ascended into the immortal realm? Of course. First Elder declared proudly. The 3 lords have naturally long since become immortals, and through an amazing technique, connected to the lower realm and established the Cold Spear Association to the remnants Grandmaster Ling left behind. Ling Han frowned deeply. What exactly was going on here? Jiang Yufeng had definitely become immortal. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to be living 4,000 to 5,000 years. And Jiang Yufeng had a falling out with his fellow disciples, Ling Han deduced, because of the reckoning. Perhaps Jiang Yufeng allied with the 5 sects of the immortal realm. As a result, the other 3 drew a clear line between themselves and him. Thus, the 2 Cold Spear Associations became completely incompatible with each other. This was a very logical deduction. But Chen Rui Jing and the others also became immortals, so what was going on? According to his understanding of the 3 of them, they would definitely not defect, so why would they have allied with the 5 sects of the immortal realm? But it was obvious that the skies had not been split open, and if they wanted to become immortals 10,000 years ago, their only choice was to become a member of the 5 sections. All 4 of his disciples could not be depended on. Hold on. Ling Han shook his head. He understood his 4 disciples. They were definitely not that type of person, but he had forgotten one person, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Could it be that the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden extended a helping hand, and brought his 4 disciples together with her into the immortal realm? Even if Chen Rui Jing and the others would rather die than submit, could they match the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden? Furthermore, this woman considered herself to be the mistress. After Ling Han died, would Chen Rui Jing and the others dare to defy their master's wife? This was the real logical explanation. Young friend. Young friend. When the First Elder saw Ling Han was spacing out, he could not help but call him a few times. Ling Han snapped out of his daze, and smiled. Many thanks to First Elder for clearing up my confusion. Ho ho, it's just a small matter, don't mention it, First Elder smiled. He could tell that Ling Han had boundless future prospects. As a result, he planned to form an amicable relationship with Ling Han. After all, this was something that only had pros and no cons. Ling Han drew out a great many valuable medicinal herbs, and said, I have injured a few people of your respected association, and I am really sorry about it. This is a little token of my apology, please do accept. First Elder did not pretend to be reserved. With a casual swipe of his hand, he had stored all these medicinal herbs into his spatial spirit tool. Young friend, if you encounter any irresolvable danger, there is no harm in coming here. I can ensure your safety no matter how big the danger is. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. Was he hinting at the reckoning? However, they had talked quite amiably for 2 strangers, so it would not be proper for him to probe too deeply. Thus, he nodded, and said, Then, I thank you, First Elder. I beg my leave. I shall not bother to see you out. First Elder smiled. He was in the Shattering Void tier, and Ling Han could somewhat be considered a Heaven tier elite, so he naturally was not qualified for the First Elder to see him out personally. Even if First Elder really said that he wanted to see him out, that would merely be words of courtesy. The world of martial arts had its own rules. Let's go. Let's go. Hun Yo was already impatient in the first place. She had been torturing Rabbit all this while. The moment she heard that they could leave, she hurriedly grabbed one of Rabbit's legs and dragged him along, causing Rabbit to complain endlessly. Rabbit feared nothing in this world, except for Hunyo. They walked out the main doors of the Cold Spear Association, and immediately saw a great many people glaring at them. Hunyo instantly became alert, released Rabbit, and said, "Want to fight? Nyo shall accompany." This would have been a very funny thing to hear from the mouth of a 10-year-old child, but even third elder and fifth elder had been beaten down at her hands. Who would dare treat it as a harmless joke from a child? Rabbit rubbed his backside, his face laden with grief. Being dragged out all this way, Lord Rabbit was feeling tremendous stress. Why was this brat still completely unscathed? Everyone was confused. No matter how they thought about it, there was no way that Ling Han could possibly match the shattering void tear. But then, how did he walk out completely uninjured like this? The False Cold Spear Association will always be the False Cold Spear Association. To actually have an intruder freely come and go like this, how humiliating. Although the members of the Northern Spear Association were extremely displeased, the fact was that Ling Han had indeed walked out completely unharmed, so what else could they say in retort? Ling Han smiled, and said, "I arrived in front of the First Elder, and realized I was far from being able to match him. Thus, I admitted my loss and apologized. First Elder treasures talent, and so allowed me to leave." Since the First Elder was so amicable, he naturally would not mind degrading himself a bit to protect the pride of the Northern Spear Association. When they heard him say so, the members of the Northern Spear Association immediately smiled. So it seemed that the First Elder valued his talent and so did not move against Ling Han. Furthermore, Ling Han admitted that he was not the First Elder's match, which naturally recovered the pride of the Northern Spear Association. Although they still felt a little unhappy about how Ling Han had come out without a scratch on him. "My 3 elders, he's Ling Han," Mu Feiyao suddenly exclaimed. So he's Ling Han." The 3 elders of the Southern Spear Association turned to look at Ling Han simultaneously, looking murderous. "Exactly," Mu Feiyao stated solemnly. "Young friend, immediately change your name," one of the old men said, commanding Ling Han. These 3 old men were 3rd Elder, 4th Elder, and 8th Elder of the Southern Spear Association respectively. The speaker was precisely the 4th Elder. Ling Han could not help but smile, and asked, "Why?" "Because you are unqualified," 8th Elder continued. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "You all revere a historical person, that is your freedom, but you cannot influence others. What name I call myself is my freedom, and no business of yours. Neither is it something that you can take charge of. So this means you will refuse unless you're forced to do so?" 8th Elder asked darkly. "Damn old man, why are you acting all fierce?" Hunyo jumped out, pointed at him, and declared, "Nyo wants to beat you up." 8th Elder would naturally pay no attention to a little girl, and only acted as if he had not heard her speak. "Actually dare to ignore Nyo, Nyo is angry now." Hunyo swung Rabbit in one hand, and directly flung him at 8th Elder. "Fuck, whom did Lord Rabbit offend?" Rabbit screamed as he shot out like an artillery shell. Chapter 825, Fainted in Fury. Peng, Rabbit flew unusually fast and severely smashed into the face of 8th Elder. And it wasn't over yet. Rabbit had its own attacking attributes. Its 4 paws paused for a moment before clawing wildly at 8th Elder's face, instantly causing his face to be full of scratch marks and bleed continuously. Everyone who had been watching became completely speechless. At least, the members of the Northern Spear Association were aware that Hunyo was indeed incomparably powerful, but would never have imagined that even a rabbit was this powerful as well, actually being able to reduce 8th Elder of the Southern Spear Association to such a pathetic state. The rabbit looked at himself from head to toe, sighed in relief, and patted his chest with lingering fear as he spoke. "Scared Lord Rabbit to death. Thankfully, I was not injured." This scene caused everyone irritation. "Of course you aren't hurt. The one injured is 8th Elder. Pity that 8th Elder, who was actually an elite of the heaven tier. How could he be humiliated to such a miserable state in public? Also, how could a rabbit open its mouth to speak? Eighth Elder was so angry that his entire body trembled. With a trembling finger, he pointed at Huan I. He became short of breath, and almost passed out completely. It was really humiliating. He was a heaven-tier elite, yet ended up in such a pitiful state. It was really horrible and despicable. You what? This Lord Rabbit hasn't even complained. Old fart, your face was really tough and almost broke this Lord Rabbit's claws. Can you afford to compensate me? The rabbit said as he glared fiercely. Eighth Elder immediately shifted his hatred onto the rabbit. This rabbit was simply bringing his own taunting effect, provoking others the moment it opened its mouth. Die. He flew out with a slap aimed towards the rabbit. Little ancestor, help. The rabbit screamed. It was only in the deity transformation tier, but possessed a powerful bloodline. That was why previously it was able to injure the Eighth Elder by clawing him. But now, how could it be a match for him in a direct confrontation? The rabbit ran quickly. With a xiao, it was already hiding behind Hunyo. He then poked his head out and pointed his claw at the Eighth Elder. Little ancestor, hit him. Hunyo rolled up her sleeves. Fighting and such was what she liked the most. When the Eighth Elder missed his aim and slammed through the air, he turned around at once and directed a punch towards Hunyo. The punch expelled out an endless brilliance as unmatched formidable martial intent overflowed from it. In a fit of rage caused by shame, he had no regard of this being within Cold City, and directly bombarded the target with his full strength. At this moment, he strongly desired to annihilate everyone to prevent disclosure of today's incident so that no one would ever know how he had been humiliated. Hong, the strike came, and it was incredibly terrifying. Hunyo grabbed the rabbit from behind her back, lifted it, and flung it forward to smash towards the Eighth Elder again. Fuck, why is it Lord Rabbit again? Rabbit screamed. Peng, the rabbit once again smashed onto the Eighth Elder's face. It possessed a powerful bloodline and a body different from a normal rabbit's. Thus, this one smash caused the Eighth Elder to become disoriented and dizzy. However, that was trivial. With Ashua, shwa, the rabbit again clawed madly at the Eighth Elder's face before fleeing away. You! Eighth Elder pointed at Hunyo and the rabbit, gasping as he unexpectedly ran short of breath. Suddenly, he stumbled and his body fell to the ground. Members of the Southern Spear Association quickly went up to gather around him. Then, one by one, they cried out in alarm and bore a weird expression. The Eighth Elder has passed out. In their eyes, a heaven-tier elite was the world's most invincible and unmatched existence. And yet, this elite had actually fainted from anger because of a few tricks coming from a little girl and a talking rabbit. Who could accept this? Everything happened as if this was a dream. Keek. Hunyo held her sides as she roared with laughter and clapped her hands earnestly. This is fun, really fun. Whom will we play with next? Her gaze swept back and forth between the faces of the Third Elder and Fourth Elder, causing these two old guys to feel tremendous pressure. They saw Hunyo's attack earlier with their own eyes. There was nothing fancy about her attack, it was just very quick. However, it was this speed that made them fearful, and their hearts were thumping rapidly. Although Old Eighth's strength was slightly weaker than theirs, the gap in strength between them wasn't large. Even if it had been them earlier instead, it would have had the same outcome. Ling Han laughingly said, Now, is there still anyone who wishes to force me to change my name? Members of the Southern Spear Association were all angry, but dared not voice their resentment. The Eighth Elder had been made to faint from anger, while the other two elders had suddenly became mute, so what more could they say? Let's go. Ling Han snapped his fingers. Let's go. Hunyo hopped forward cheerfully, grabbing Rabbit's long ears and dragging it along with her. Ah, you are abusing animals, the rabbit screamed. Mu Fei Yao looked on with wide eyes and an expression full of surprise. When she'd first seen Ling Han, the strength of the other party was extremely weak, she could kill him with just one finger. Now, She had just stepped into the flower blossom tier, but the other party had grown to a height that she could only look up to. Thinking of herself being previously spanked by Ling Han, her pretty face couldn't help but become hot gradually, and her behind also seemed to become a little itchy. Ling Han returned to the capital of the Purple Moon Empire. This return trip took up almost 10 days. Ma Duobao should have resolved the totem's issue, and be about to head into the final battle with the 5 great sections. He wouldn't want to miss such a good show. Sure enough, when he returned to the palace, a sword's virtual image could be seen above the palace the totem. Ling Han could sense that presently, this sword had condensed a considerable amount of the power of the people's will, enough to suppress flower blossom tier cultivators. Really, Amazingit had only been a few days. However, the establishment of the Purple Moon Empire was much earlier than that of the Great Ling Empire. Now, it was only to let the people of the nation have a target or object for their belief. Naturally, it was easy to condense the power of the people's hearts. In a few days, the totem had advanced to a considerable height. The middle state was already big, and the overall level of martial arts was considerably high. Perhaps it would not take long for this totem to rival the Shattering Void tier. Ho ho, my tanned brother, just as I thought, after forming a real nation, with just the middle state alone being so huge, it was almost enough to fill me to bursting point. Ma Duobao sighed. Ling Han frowned, and said, Brother Ma, you have recultivated the body, but still can't endure such strong power of the nation? How much power of the nation can be endured is determined by 2 aspects. One is the level of your own cultivation, and the other is having a tyrannically strong body. When it comes to cultivation tier, I'm already in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and thus, it's impossible to advance further. My body has reached level 10 precious metals toughness, but it's also the limit. Ma Duobao shook his head, appearing somewhat pitiful. But then, he immediately smiled. However, compared to the last time, the power of the nation which I could accommodate this time had at least doubled. There should be a 30% chance of success to split open the sky. Only 30%. Ling Han was surprised. Firstly, it was because of Ma Duobao's strength, given his battle prowess was definitely more than 15 stars. Furthermore, his body had reached level 10 precious metals toughness, which made him practically invincible and without equal in this world. Having this kind of strength and body, coupled with the power of the nation, the success rate of splitting open the sky was still only 30%. This was astonishing indeed. What if it was him? Ling Han thought to himself that as long as his cultivation level could reach the Shattering Void tier, then his body would be able to reach the level of divine metal, and the power of the nation that he could accommodate would far exceed Ma Duobao's. And his own martial prowess wasn't any inferior. Comparing the 2 of them, what would be the rate of success for him to split open the sky? Chapter 826, Storming into the Heavens Sword Sect. Brother Ma, if the matter can't be done, why not leave it to me? Ling Han made a cutting gesture against the sky. It was no joke to split open the sky. Heaven and earth had its spirit, which was equivalent to an independent body. As long as this was the way, it wouldn't allow the integration of another new body, even if it was an elevation. This was the reasoning of better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. Granted, splitting open the sky could be successful, but what if it failed? That would absolutely invoke the wrath of the heaven and earth, with perpetrators struck by lightning. Otherwise, how could the Purple Moon Empire be destroyed in the past? If worse comes to worst, they could try again after a period of time. Try again, and perhaps they might just succeed once. When they slept, it would be for several millennia. Perhaps this was their intention to avoid the revenge from heaven and earth. Ma Duobao shook his head, and said, There is not much time left for us. If we wait until there is movement from above, then we would certainly lose initiative. The immortals would come when it was time to concoct the realm pill. While the descended immortals would only be limited to the Shattering Void tier, their battle prowess was absolutely formidable, and it was basically impossible for them to be killed. If there were many people rushing forth in the midst of battle, then how would you split open the sky? Ling Han nodded. What they were lacking now was time. You're reading on novel full thanks. The next day, they had set up camp and moved forward to battle with the 5 great sections. From the point of view of mortals, there were thousands of miles separating the 5 great sects, far beyond reasonable limits. However, in the eyes of shattering void tier elites, this little distance was only a day's journey. Thus, the 5 great sects were very close to each other, which made mutually supporting one another extremely easy. When Ma Duo Bao arrived at the front line, the remaining 7 kings had gathered. They joined up with him and the Lunar King, and then set out for toward the Heaven's Sword sect. Needless to say, the elites of the 5 great sects would surely converge in the Heaven's Sword sect for the decisive battle with the Purple Moon Empire. Aside from the Heavenly Astral King, the Lunar King and the Flame King, the other 5 kings were Great Water King, Justice Mountain King, Clear Solar King, Pure Golden King, and Opulent Peace King 1. All 8 of them were shattering void tier elites with battle prowess of 15 stars, terrifyingly formidable. Along the way, obviously there were people attempting to stop their advance. However, the 8 kings needed only casually strike, and they would naturally sweep past the obstacles, step by step pressing on towards the main gate of the Heaven's Sword sect. There were not many people in their party. In addition to Ling Han's group of 3, Ma Duo Bao had only brought the 8 kings and 1,000 elite troops. However, each and every one of this 1,000 were all high-level heaven-tier cultivators. Furthermore, they were also experts in combined assaults of formation arts, and their battle prowess was sufficient to rival high-level shattering void-tier cultivators. The disciples of the Heaven's Sword sect were defeated as they journeyed on. Soon, the army arrived in front of the main gate of the Heaven's Sword sect. They couldn't proceed any further, because there was a protective formation in place. Leave it to me. Pure Golden King came out, brandishing a golden spear. He held it on his chest, while his eyes turned into 2 golden stars. On the tip of the spear, power was condensed into a light ball. At first it was only the size of an egg, but no matter how hard he tried condensing the power, it had just turned into the size of a watermelon, and would not get any bigger. Ling Han watched while his blood began to run cold. This power from this one strike would be absolutely terrifying. Among the 3 styles of black origin, the last type was called breaking limits, whereby one would need to stand still and gather strength for a few minutes. Once the attack was launched, it would utilize the whole person's strength. When used in battle, it would simply be an act of courting death. However, if it was used to break a protective formation, this was indeed a clever move. Was there an unbreakable defense in this world? No. There wasn't an unbreakable one. If it did not break, the only explanation was that not enough force had been exerted. Therefore, the name of breaking limits really held true. This attack by Pure Golden King would have the same effect despite using a different approach. He would never use it against the enemy during the battle. However, given that he now had the protection of comrades, he naturally had no qualms about slowly gathering strength to blast out the most powerful strike. After at least 5 minutes, Pure Golden King finally took a step forward. However, with this one step, he had already come in front of the defensive barrier created by the formation. He took aim with his spear. Pooh! The tip of the spear pointed towards the defensive formation, and suddenly there was endless brilliance, so dazzling that the surrounding people's eyes couldn't even open. Boom, the ground was shaking. Heaven's Sword Mountain was also shaking as the defensive barrier nearly collapsed, but it ultimately stabilized. As strong as the Pure Golden King was, this one shot of power condensed over 5 minutes actually did not break through the defensive formation. Ha 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 ha. The other 7 kings roared with laughter, all of them thrown into disorder and not bothering to keep their image. Old 7th, you have indeed regressed. How could you not destroy the defensive formation with a single shot? Did you use too much effort last night? Hey, young people need to know how to control themselves. Don't always keep doing those things all day long. One by one, the 7 kings ridiculed him without mercy. The Pure Golden King's expression became serious. He said, "This formation is indeed much stronger than when we first came. Ma Duobao opened his mouth to speak, helping his trusted retainer out of embarrassment. This is normal. After it was defeated by us in the past, the 5 great sects would have painstakingly striven to strengthen the defensive formation. Therefore, it is normal for my dear subject not to be able to break through this formation. It has just blocked one blow from me. Let me try again, and within a day's time, I will surely blast down this formation. Pure Golden King snorted, not giving up. There isn't much time for you to waste. The Lunar King swayed gently with grace as she came out. Let me do it. Fourth sister, let me do it. Pure Golden King refused to give in since this was no joke, this was a matter of saving face. What, you think you can disobey me just because you're a little stronger now? Should I properly teach you a lesson? The Lunar King licked her red lips, and her charming eyes turned soft, giving off a dangerous aura. Pure Golden King immediately became frightened. One couldn't be fooled by this fourth sister's gracefulness and appearance of an alluring woman, as her temper was very explosive. She even dared to hit His Majesty, what more him? If he were to count the number of times he was beaten up in the past, it would definitely give him a trauma. Fine, let me do it. Ma Duobao walked out with his big belly and smiled. It's alright not to break this formation. Anyway, we just have to pass through it. Just making an opening will do. Doesn't this mean we have to squeeze in? Your Majesty, your requirement is really too low. The Lunar King immediately opposed it. That right? Boss, that isn't domineering enough. It's better to blast through it. The other 7 kings added on. Ma Duobao laughed with an amiable expression. His little eyes squinted into crescents. He said, My beloved kings, do you bear any dissatisfaction towards me? The 8 kings immediately shook their heads, and replied in unison, No. No. He had to be joking. Their boss usually spoke very courteously, but once he was serious, he became a person who would destroy the gods and knock down Buddha if they were an obstacle in his path. From the beginning, which of them wasn't a ruthless person? And yet, weren't they still beaten into submission by Ma Duobao? It's good if there is none. Ma Duobao said, all smiles. He casually stroked a few fingers, Quang, and the defensive barrier of the formation immediately revealed a gap. The gap was cut into a large opening, enough to accommodate the army. So powerful. In his heart, Ling Han was dumbstruck. Earlier, the pure Golden King had wanted to break the formation, while Ma Duobao had only created a passage. The difficulty could not be compared, but having such a destructive power with just a few casual strokes, it really made sense for Ma Duobao to become the boss of the 8 kings. He raised his head and saw that the Heaven's Sword sect was close at hand. Chapter 827, Wager. When was the last time he came to the Heaven's Sword sect? Ling Han could not help but look dazed as if he had returned to 10,000 years ago. He was invited by the Sword Emperor and came here to concoct alchemical pills. It was here that he managed to con the 3 techniques of black origin from the Sword Emperor. 10,000 years had passed, and nothing seemed to have changed here at all. It looked just like it looked those many years ago. Woo! The bugle horn sounded, and innumerable people flew out from various spots in the mountains. This protection mountain great formation had been broken, so every member of the 5 sects naturally moved out. The aura of powerful elites undulated, shockingly frightening. If these people combined their forces and attacked at the same time, would this realm collapse instantly? However, it should not go that far with the existence of the Eye of Heavenly Tao. It would definitely interfere to maintain the stability of this realm. To the Eye of Heavenly Tao, as long as the regulation of this realm was not destroyed, then no matter how many people you killed, it would not care. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, Beast Snake King, and the others were all here. Upon careful estimation, the Shattering Void tier elites here actually numbered in the hundreds, which proved that the 5 great sects had indeed revealed all their cards, intending to have a fight to the death with the Purple Moon Empire here. After this battle, the world would be at peace. A feeling of disbelief rose up in Ling Han. This was a little too easy, wasn't it? But when he thought about it again, the Purple Moon Empire had indeed grasped an overwhelming amount of power. Even if Ma Duobao himself had not moved, the 8 kings had already thrashed the 5 sects severely. In the end, they could only be trapped here and guard this last piece of territory. That the final battle would happen now seemed understandable. Respected guests have come from afar, please forgive us for not coming out to receive you. An old man who looked very amiable walked out. He was tall and slender, with a full head of white hair and a white beard. Wearing garments of coarse cloth and hemp, he seemed filled with a sage-like air. When he walked out, even those like the Sword King and the Azure Phoenix Divine Empress tacitly took a step back to offset his position. By now, those that could stand together with this old man were 4 similarly white-haired elders, 3 men and 1 woman. They were absolutely antiques, and one could clearly see that their vitality was declining. It was very strange. The 5 sects obviously possessed the time liquid and could seal off the lapsing of their life energy. After the reckoning, they could ascend to the immortal realm and have another breakthrough. After they had become immortals, their lifespan would gain a terrifying increase. Ho ho, is this meant to deal with powerful enemies like ourselves? Justice Mountain King smirked. It is impossible to break through to become immortals in this realm. So, the more time you spend, the more possible it is to advance further in the level of the Shattering Void tier, increasing your battle prowess to 15 stars, 16 stars, or even more, the Flame King continued. However, 14 stars would be a milestone, and the breaching of every subsequent star would be as difficult as climbing up to the heavens. Even Shattering Void tier elites only have just slightly over 1,000 years of life. So what if you had spent your whole life on study and research? Your talent is a cold, hard truth. If you are only capable of reaching 12 stars of battle prowess in the prime of your life, then even until you die of age, your highest level would be 14 stars at most. The 8 kings offered their comments one after another, completely indifferent and treating these 5 elders as if they were empty air. Ho ho, I've long heard that the 8 kings are unprecedented heroes, and their divine techniques are invincible. Today, I have finally seen it for myself. That old antique from before was not angered either. Instead, he smiled, and asked, why don't we set ourselves a wager? Just a bunch of losers, what right do you have to make a wager with us? The 8 kings sneered. Are you afraid? The old man provoked. Though the heroic spirits of the 8 kings reached the clouds, they would definitely not act rashly, none of them replied. They had come to deal with the 5 sects, and not for some kind of wager. Yet Ma Duobao smiled, and asked, what kind of wager? We are all cultivators, so the wager is naturally regarding ability. That old man smiled. Both sides will send out 9 people to fight a one-on-one battle. The side that wins 5 rounds would be winning this wager. The 8 kings stared blankly. 9 rounds? Were you sure? Could it be that you know that them 8 kings along with Ma Duobao were precisely 9 people, and just happened to be strongest battle prowess of the Purple Moon Empire? This kind of one-on-one battle was practically the strong suit of the Purple Moon Empire. Using one's shortcoming against their opponent's strength, were they so stupid? But, there were so many sly old foxes in the 5 sects, how could all of them be fools? Ma Duobao continued to ask, what happens if we win? And what happens if we lose? This was the key of the matter. If they lost, and the consequences were practically harmless, then they'd just go ahead with the wager. The old man stated, if we lose, we shall surrender to the Purple Moon Empire, and you may do as you like with us. With these words, even the 8 kings were moved. Had they nothing else to do? Become idiots? Or been kicked by an ass? Ma Duobao smiled faintly, seeming to be completely uncaring, and asked, then what if we lost? Within 100 years, you all must not go to arms. The old man raised a single upright finger. The conditions of this wager were practically very unfair. If the 5 sects lost, their lives or deaths would be completely up to them, but if the Purple Moon Empire lost, they would only be unable to go to arms for 100 years. For an ordinary person, 100 years were his whole life. But for the Shattering Void tier, 100 years could only be considered the equivalent of 10 years of a normal lifespan. Ma Duobao looked confused. The only thing the 5 sects had to rely on were the numbers of their Shattering Void tier. As the saying went, a great number of ants could kill an elephant. Strength came from numbers. However, he was naturally unafraid. Aside from he himself, no one knew what extent his strength reached. Now, the 5 sects had given up their numerical advantage, and desired a one-on-one battle with them. This was pitifully foolish of them. What reason was there behind their actions? The old man raised another finger, smiled, and said, "However, we have one condition." So this was the main point? And that is, Your Majesty cannot participate in the battles. Ma Duobao could not participate. This indeed caused the Purple Moon Empire to be short of a very strong fighter, but the problem here was the 8 kings were practically invincible. So far, aside from that giant silver spider in the ancient mine of Fire Country and Shuang, there should be no one alive with 15 stars of Shattering Void tier of battle prowess, right? Even if the 5 sects managed to get these 2 esteemed beings to help them, and the 8 kings lost 2 rounds, weren't there still 6 rounds they were guaranteed to win? How strange. Do you dare? The old general asked. Ma Duobao hummed slightly, then nodded, and said, "All right, I shall agree to this wager." The other side had over 100 Shattering Void tier elites, after all. As long as a few of them managed to escape successfully, and wrought havoc and destruction in the wider world, that would be enough to cause tremendous damage to power of the nation. Thus, if he could subdue the enemy troops without actually going to arms, that would be the best strategy. The old man laughed and said, "If that is so, then in the first round, we shall first send out someone, and the next round will be your turn. In this way, we will take turns. How about it?" Agreed. Ma Duobao assented. "Anyun, you will fight in the first round," the old man said. "Yes," the Sword King answered. He walked on air and stopped about 100 li one above the mountain peak, and asked, 8 kings, who among you would be fighting with me?" "I'll go." The Lunar King rose up into the skies as well, and stood on the same level as the Sword King. In this first round, it was obvious that the Purple Moon Empire was sure to win. The Sword King was indeed very strong. He had comprehended Sword Heart, but he had not yet reached the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. His battle prowess did not yet reach 11 stars, so how could he be a match for the Lunar King? This was a battle between 2 opponents who were on 2 completely different levels. "Please." The Sword King was unafraid, though. With a sword seal formed on his fingers, he seemed graceful and poised. Chapter 828, Surprise Reinforcements. After exchanging greetings, the Sword King immediately displayed his might, unleashing a sword strike. It was precisely the 10,000 techniques returned to 1, which condensed into a 300-meter-long sword ray, slashing towards the Lunar King. The Lunar King, however, seemed totally unconcerned, reaching out with her hand and grabbing Sword King's sword ray. She clenched it, and the sword ray instantly shattered, turning into endless pieces and falling down. She nodded, and said, "Your talent isn't bad." After reaching the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, cultivating arduously for another 100 years to increase battle prowess, you can attempt to reach 15 stars of battle prowess. This was a very high evaluation, at least up till now. 15 stars Shattering Void tier was the strongest battle prowess. Ma Duobao hadn't truly showed his hand, while Helian Tianyun was glory from countless years ago, and at most only returned to the spiritual infant tier by now. Ling Han acknowledged it on the inside. Those who were able to comprehend the heart of martial arts were definitely exceptional talents, and were definitely impressive in battles at the same tier. The Sword King didn't reply. He had become well known long ago, being the finest elite in the world to begin with, but now, despite it being a compliment, how could he possibly be glad about being treated like a junior? He swung his sword, the sword shi imposing, shining over the world, even heaven and earth paled, and only his sword danced between heaven and earth as if it could split even them. Powerful, he was really powerful. Unfortunately, his opponent was the Lunar King. 4 stars of a gap in strength wasn't something that any effort and imposing manner could change. The Lunar King casually swatted the sword lights that came assaulting her, easily extinguishing them. After exchanging about 100 moves, the Lunar King finally got serious, and shot the Sword King down from the sky with a single slap, making him lose battle power completely. The first battle, Purple Moon Empire won. This time, it was Purple Moon Empire's turn to send someone out to battle. The Flame King took the field, while the other side sent the Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. The Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was unexpectedly the first to reach the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, her normal battle prowess reaching 11 stars, and she also had the advantage of her blood lineage as her wings spread, her battle prowess rocketed to 13 stars. This was extremely terrifying. She could run over the North Sea's royal clan by herself. However, against the Flame King, this wasn't enough, and soon she was defeated, adding a second defeat to the 5 great sects side. Ling Han had thought that the 5 sects would send out some mysterious expert in the second round. For example, an elite from the Sea tribe. Their imperial clan might have supreme elites of 15 stars. But, by the looks of it now, the other party seemed to have given up. This was completely off. The 5 great sects had deep roots in the divine realm, so how could they surrender so easily? There was definitely something off. Ling Han spread out his divine sense in an attempt to find out whether the 5 great sects were taking advantage of the situation to lay down a killing formation, only using the wager to buy time and in reality attempting to kill them all in one go. They didn't tamper with anything, Ma Duobao said. He also had a puzzled look. Ling Han obviously trusted his judgment. Although Ma Duobao had almost never displayed his strength, Ling Han believed that Ma Duobao was definitely the world's #1 expert at the current stage, the one and only. In the future, Helian Tianyun should be able to compare against Ma Duobao, and after he himself advanced to the Shattering Void tier, he wouldn't fear the enemies, either. Even Black Tower's power boost could allow him to win instantly. But now, Ma Duobao was definitely the world's strongest, and since he said there was no ambush, then there definitely was no ambush. Soon, 2 more battles were over. The Heavenly Astral King and the Grand Water King each added a victory to Purple Moon Empire. Now, once the 5 sects lost 1 more match, there'd be no need to fight anymore, as they would have lost 5 matches. Was it really that easy? Hee, it's come to the 5th match that quickly. The old man from previously coughed and said, Zhua Qifang, you take this match. The crowd separated as a youngster walked out. He was truly young, his blood and chi were vigorous like a furnace, soaring straight into sky. The relative age definitely wouldn't surpass 20, the stage when the body was growing. So even if he was in the Shattering Void tier, he would be at most 200 years old. And this youngster was really in the Shattering Void tier. This humble one is Zhua Qifang. The youngster walked with his hands behind his back, appearing extremely nonchalant. I'm 19 this year. Those words were enough to see his pride, or else, why announce his age? I was a Shattering Void tier elite at 19, if I wasn't impressive, who was? Ling Han, Ma Duobao, and the 8 kings all revealed shocked looks. A 19-year-old Shattering Void tier elite was too ridiculous. Ling Han was walking down the old route again, but he was almost 21 years old now, and still hadn't returned to the Heaven tier, and there was at least 2 to 3 years' time before he'd reach the Shattering Void tier. However, Ling Han's speed was already more than fast enough. He was even suppressing his own cultivation to avoid unstable foundations, which would influence his progress in the future. A 19-year-old Shattering Void tier elite? What the hell? How much spirit medicine did he take to achieve it? Such a Shattering Void tier was definitely a paper tiger, and anyone at the first layer of the Shattering Void tier could defeat him. Ma Duobao stared at Zhua Qifang. After a while, his expression became extremely stern as he said, this person's in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier and is very, very strong. Even he used 2 very, so it could be seen how cautious he was. The 8 kings were all shocked. Although it was a bit hard to accept that Zhuo Qifang was such a young shattering void tier elite, there indeed was some divine medicine that allowed people to reach the heavens in a single bound. However, going from the first layer of the shattering void tier to the 9th layer, several tens of years wouldn't be long at all. A 19-year-old boy in the 9th layer of the shattering void tier, this was truly surprising. Who could compare against him? Probably only Hunyosha was only one step away from the shattering void tier. With her freakishness, going from first layer to the 9th layer wouldn't take much time. There was a 99% chance for her to reach humanity's peak at 19 years old. In the world, there was actually a second person as freakish as Hunyo? Who will fight me? Zhuo Qifang taunted. Don't make me wait too long. The Justice Mountain King was annoyed by his arrogance, so he jumped out immediately and said, "This king will." "Alright, I'll give you pointers," Zhuo Qifang said loftily. The Justice Mountain King laughed out of extreme anger, and said, "Then let's fight in the skies." "No need, one move is enough to subdue you. There's no need to waste time," Zhuo Qifang said with a smile. These words were obviously even more arrogant. The Justice Mountain King was instantly furious. His entire body was bound by lightning, while his hands formed seals as golden light shot in all directions. The thunderclap 9th heaven and the earth overturning seal. Ling Han nodded inwardly. The 8 kings obviously knew each other's mystical powers, and each person grasped not only a single one. Zhuo Qifang revealed a curious look, and said, "Mystical powers? Hee, I'm rather interested to see them." He actually still had his hands behind his back, such arrogance was beyond overblown. The Justice Mountain King let out a furious battle cry, and his figure charged out. With a Z, he turned into lightning, moving extremely quickly. After turning into lightning, his speed was already shocking, and on top of the shattering void tier standing on top of humanity's peak, the speed was even more terrifying. Justice Mountain King's body left an afterimage in its original place, but his real body already charged in front of Zhuo Qifang, launching a hand seal right at Zhuo Qifang's chest as an array of golden light was shot out in all directions. Pung! As earth overturning seal pressed down, Zhuo Qifang was instantly smashed into pieces. For a shattering void tier elite, splitting into pieces was simply splitting into pieces, having no relation to death at all. He could completely reform his body, but he would definitely suffer heavy injuries. Then, this battle would obviously be his defeat, which would mean that the wager would be lost. Hee, a little interesting, but still not fast enough. Zhuo Qifang's voice sounded, his body perfectly whole. The shattered body was also an afterimage. Chapter 829, Consecutive Defeats. The 8 kings' expressions changed drastically at the same time, while thunderous cheers sounded from the 5 great sect side. Zhuo Qifang stood loftily, hands behind his back, and said smilingly, "Can you be faster? Otherwise, you won't be able to catch me." Justice Mountain King's expression turned stern. Ma Duobao's evaluation of this person was very, very strong, using 2 very. Although Zhuo Qifang had only displayed his terrifying speed so far, his battle prowess was probably not weak either, or else he wouldn't be worth Ma Duobao's evaluation. Justice Mountain King crossed both hands as an endless imposing presence circulated. The power of laws? Zhuo Qifang frowned. Now that's somewhat problematic, one move can't take care of things. If he said that earlier, everyone wouldn't believe him. Defeating the 8 kings was a completely unrealistic thing, and you still wanted to defeat him in one move? But after he displayed the astonishing speed, his words suddenly held more weight, and people couldn't help but wonder. Perhaps he truly was extremely powerful. After all, from 15 stars onwards, there was still 5 from 20 stars. Why couldn't he be at 16 stars, 17 stars, 19 stars, or even 20 stars? Justice Mountain King shouted harshly, and as lightning flickered, he charged towards Zhuo Qifang again with golden hand seals fluttering all over the sky. Zhuo Qifang only shifted his feet to evade, shuffling freely through the array of golden light. However, Justice Mountain King also used the power of laws this time. Unlike Ling Han, who was only able to deploy it with his left hand, lines formed and slowly wove into a web, enveloping Zhuo Qifang. Retract. Justice Mountain King groaned, retracting the web of laws as if catching fish. Zhuo Qifang had nowhere to run. Zhuo Qifang, however, smiled faintly, extending a finger and pressing it forward. Open. Wang, a faint light flickered on his finger as the web of laws immediately split open, and he walked out unhurriedly with a smile, and said, "That will count as one move, and I'll use one more move to suppress you." He attacked with a finger again. A giant 3,000-meter-long finger instantly appeared in the sky and pressed towards Justice Mountain King. As the giant finger swept by, the air was ignited, and all things were annihilated. 18 stars, the Lunar King and the other kings all cried out at the same time, looks of disbelief on their faces. The power of this attack actually reached 18 stars. Hong. The giant finger pressed down, mountains crumbled and the ground shattered, the blazing sun paled, and countless stars fell down from the sky. Everyone was struck dumb. Was this really something the power of man could do? Was this not the might unleashed by a divine being? However, the eye of heavenly Tao didn't appear, meaning that this was still an attack unleashed at the peak of humanity. Several elites intervened one after another, sweeping away the dust all over the sky, yet the place where Justice Mountain King was standing had already become empty, and there was no trace of him or fragments of his body. "We've lost this battle," Ma Duobao said, holding the Justice Mountain King in his arms. If he hadn't intervened just now, Justice Mountain King probably would have been heavily injured, if not dead. 18 stars against 15 stars, this was an overwhelming difference in power. He. Zhuo Qifang looked at Ma Duobao, and said, "Your battle prowess should have reached 20 stars, right?" The 8 kings were enraged at once. He was their liege, and while they could laugh at and joke with him normally, they definitely didn't allow others to be disrespectful to him. Ma Duobao didn't answer, however, and asked in return, "You should be from the divine realm, right? You also used the power of laws just now, but it differed greatly from the realm power of this realm." What? Everyone was startled. From the divine realm? This rather explained why he was already in the 9th layer of the shattering void tier while being so young and why his battle prowess even reached 18 stars. However, the problem was, why would the divine realm send people down at this time? Zhuo Qifang laughed loudly, and said, "We can't hide it from you as expected." "That's right, I am indeed from the divine realm, and very much want to fight with you. However, 20 stars of battle prowess. This is called the extreme battle prowess, even I have no certainty of coming out unscathed." He admitted it. Ling Han's heart thumped fiercely. The reason why the 5 sects planned such a wager seemed very obvious. Zhuo Qifang definitely wasn't the only one who came down from the divine realm. Yes, it should be 5, and if Ma Duobao was kicked aside, they could guarantee 5 victories. Who would have thought that the divine realm would send people down? To send divine beings down, the expense paid is too great, so only a few shattering void tier elites came, Zhuo Qifang kindly explained. But this is enough. After all, we're from the divine realm. Clear Solar King walked out and said, "I'll go next round, who will fight this king?" Xiao, a young girl with almond-shaped eyes and jade-like nose, jumped out, also surprisingly young, beautiful as if she came out of a painting. Her figure was slender, her thin waist could be held with one hand, and her chest undulated slightly, forming an elegant curve. The 9th layer of the shattering void tier. Needless to say, she was definitely also a genius from the divine realm, a genius trained by the divine realm's 5 sects. In comparison, the lower realm's geniuses like Su Xiu Ran, Small Sword Emperor, and Dong Linger paled, and not just by a little bit. The divine realm's resources were definitely far above those of the lower realm. If the finest geniuses that were trained couldn't reach such a standard, then that would be wrong, wouldn't it? The problem was whether these two people represented the 5 sects strongest amongst the younger generation or not. Xiao Miaoyan, the young girl, said indifferently. Although her expression was calm, deep disdain could be seen within her eyes. It was plain disdain. The lower realm, in her eyes, was the synonym of lowly, merely being a medicinal farm providing them with the realm pill. It obviously made her look down on it with disdain. Clear Solar King obviously didn't dare to be careless at all, unleashing the strongest move at once. He didn't learn the thunderclap 9th heaven, but his body turned into flames, forming a sea of flames, flashing towards Xiao Miaoyan. It was even hotter than the sun, forcing many shattering void tier elites to confine the high temperature within a designated area, or else it would definitely cause a terrifying calamity. Xiao Miaoyan, however, was unafraid as 2 wings spread behind her back spanning at least 300 meters enveloping her, completely unharmed by the flames that seemed to be able to burn the skies. The Cloud Phoenix Sect. Well, it was unknown what they were called in the divine realm. Xiao Miaoyan attacked, and also had shocking battle prowess, suppressing the Clear Solar King in a few moves and gaining one more victory. Next, the 5 great sects sent out another 2 young geniuses, Qin Wenshi and Yang Guan, respectively, and they also had 18 stars of battle prowess, turning the tables and reaching a draw after the 8th round. There was one last round. If Ma Duobao could act, he would definitely win for sure, but the other party had already laid out a scheme, excluding him. Not to mention that the 8 kings already took the field once. Even if they could take the field again, would they be the divine realm's geniuses' match? This humble one is Wu Gaoyuan, who will be my opponent. The 5 sects' last fighter was also extremely young. He was clad in fully white clothing, his bearing elegant. Ma Duobao and the 8 kings frowned. Were they really going to lose? This loss would result in a 100-year-long seclusion, and countless changes could happen. At that time, the divine realm could open a passageway, sending down true divine beings, and anything could happen. They were unwilling to be defeated. I'll go, Ling Han said. Chapter 830, I'll go. You'll go? Talking was easy, but you were only in the deity transformation tier, so you'd be giving up by taking the field, no? This was no joke. If you were too weak, then let alone receiving one attack, you'd be annihilated with just the enemy's aura. Ma Duobao didn't believe in Ling Han's prowess, but believed in Ling Han as a person. He only frowned, and said, "You sure?" "Sure." Ling Han nodded. "All right." Ma Duobao never did things sloppily. He immediately nodded, and said, "You'll take the last match." "Brother Han." Zhu Xian'er pulled on Ling Han's hand, worry painted all across her face. The opponent wasn't a normal person, but a genius from the divine realm that could look down on the older generation's elites. Even a super elite like the Lunar King couldn't rival him. Ling Han nodded, and said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine." "Ling Han, do your best." Hunyo waved her small hand, cheering for him. "Beat him up, don't give Uncle Rabbit any face," the rabbit shouted on the side. Ling Han walked out in large strides, and said, "This battle, I've accepted." Pooh. On the side of the 5 sects, everyone couldn't help laughing loudly. You, a mere deity transformation tier warrior, actually wanted to participate in such a battle? Wasn't that seeking death? Not to mention shattering void tier 18 stars of battle prowess, a normal shattering void tier elite could easily swat him to death. Was this Purple Moon Empire's way of giving up? Indeed, Ma Duobao couldn't take the field, so whoever took the field would only suffer defeat. It was all the same no matter who it was. Beast Snake King's expression, however, changed as he said, "This child can't be underestimated, his defensive abilities are extremely, extremely strong." At least, when he'd swatted down with his palm, nothing happened to Ling Han. Such defensive abilities were truly terrifying. Because that matter was somewhat embarrassing, he'd never told anyone, and even made Su Xiao keep his mouth shut, so now no one knew that Ling Han's physique was actually comparable to 10th tier rare metal. You? Wu Gaoyuan couldn't help but frown. With my noble status, how could you be fit to fight me? He felt as if he'd suffered a great humiliation. Purple Moon Emperor's court probably knew that they would lose, so they intentionally sent a deity transformation tier warrior to humiliate him. Damn it, too hateful. His eyes had an ominous glare. Since that was the case, he'd torment Ling Han and see just how much face Ling Han would still have. Cut the crap, bring it on. Ling Han taunted him with his finger. Wu Gaoyuan already regained his composure, while the fury turned into a baleful murderous aura. He revealed a cruel smile and raised his hand. Instantly, a myriad of silver lights radiated and turned into countless sharp swords, shooting at Ling Han. Let 10,000 swords pierce your heart. Ling Han didn't parry, and simply used his sword heart. Shwa, 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 the sharp swords all swept by his body all around him, yet didn't hurt a single hair. Sword heart? Wu Gaoyuan was slightly taken aback, and then laughed loudly. Not bad, to have actually comprehended the heart of martial arts. This is truly rare. Even in our divine realm, only 1 out of 10 shattering void tier elites can comprehend the heart of martial arts. So few? Ling Han said inwardly. The 8 kings all had the heart of martial arts, and quite a few in the 5 sects, like Sword King, Severing Heaven Saber, and even Su Xiu Ran and Small Sword Emperor all formed the heart of martial arts. In terms of ratio, this was at least 1/10, and even surpassed it. But thinking again, it was actually normal. Although the divine realm was abundant with cultivation resources, that only allowed martial artists to reach the shattering void tier, and an even higher level, at a faster pace martial arts still had to be personally comprehended. Moreover, since the lower realm lacked in cultivation resources, those that could break through to the shattering void tier were all geniuses amongst geniuses, so the ratio of those comprehending the heart of martial arts would naturally be higher. I'm somewhat interested. Wu Gaoyuan's killing intent was even more aroused. It's only interesting to kill such a genius. Not bad, cultivating out sword heart at the deity transformation tier, you should be the first in the lower realm, right? Su Xiu Ran and Small Sword Emperor revealed looks of disdain at the same time. They were only born in the lower realm. If they could receive the nourishment of the divine realm's cultivation resources, they definitely wouldn't be weaker than Wu Gaoyuan and the others. Ling Han reached out, hooked his finger at him, and said, "Is your zodiac a donkey? You are so chatty." A vein bulged on Wu Gaoyuan's forehead, and he said threateningly, "Infuriating me? There's no benefit to you at all. You're still blabbering?" Ling Han said disdainfully. Fuck. Wu Gaoyuan finally couldn't hold back, and unleashed a palm attack. It was still tens of thousands of swords fluttering, yet they were enhanced by a sword heart of his own. Their power was obviously stronger, no longer being affected by Ling Han's sword heart. The full-strength attack at Shattering Void Tier 18 stars. How could it be blocked? It couldn't be blocked. Peng, Ling Han was immediately sent flying like a kite with a broken tail. Wu Gaoyuan snorted, and said, "Is there a need to keep competing?" Of course. Ling Han climbed up from the ground, and exercised his joints. Pa, the bones all over his body crackled, his blood and chi boiling, soaring into the sky. This. Everyone stared dumbfounded. Was this guy a freak? Before, the Justice Mountain King was almost killed in a single hit, and only thanks to Ma Duobao intervening was the calamity avoided, but Ling Han had suffered such an attack, and was like nothing had happened at all. How could people believe this? He was only in the deity transformation tier, so how could he be so strong? This child's physique is comparable to 10th tier rare metal, a shattering void tier elite exclaimed. The other people of the 5 great sects finally understood, but still couldn't help but grimace. This guy was too freakish. A deity transformation tier warrior that possessed a physique similar to 10th tier rare metal in toughness, wouldn't that almost be invincible in the world? No wonder this guy dared to take the field. This nature-defying physique was equal to standing in an invincible position. 10th tier rare metal? Wu Gaoyuan sneered. So what, I'll refine it nevertheless. Ling Han flicked his finger, and said, "Don't just bluff, come fight. If you can't beat me in 10 moves, then you lose. *T, you can't just go talking on your own." Wu Gaoyuan snorted, and said, "Who promised you that? You, a shattering void tier elite, and one with 18 stars of battle prowess at that, fighting me, a deity transformation tier warrior, still complain that 10 moves aren't enough? How about I use only one hand against you?" Ling Han said with a smile. The people of the 5 great sects wrinkled their noses in anger. "Your damn physique was like 10th tier rare metal, almost unharmable by outside forces, so who could beat you within 10 moves? Moreover, you're only at the deity transformation tier, and your battle prowess wouldn't even be worth mentioning in front of a shattering void tier elite, not to mention one hand. What would it even matter even if it were 4 hands? This brat was truly devious." Wu Gaoyuan was also quite furious. Now, he was really tired of talking to Ling Han, and charged right out, launching attacks at Ling Han. Shua, he unleashed a treasured sword, its chilling glare shocking the skies. It was a 10th tier spirit tool, and was completely activated at this moment, so it was as if another shattering void tier elite had joined the battle. Ling Han was unafraid. He didn't plan on winning, and simply wanted to drag out the last battle into a draw. "No matter whether you're 1 or 10 shattering void tier elites, I'll only guard and not attack, so come." Hong! 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 Wu Gaoyuan brandished the 10th tier spirit tool and slashed frenziedly at Ling Han like a demonic god. Chapter 831, Indestructible Body. One had to know that the clash between a 10th tier spirit tool and another 10th tier spirit tool couldn't end up with both sides being completely unharmed. After a few clashes, it would indeed be fine, but after many, one side would definitely be damaged. And if the quality of both sides was almost the same, then both would be damaged. Thus, Ling Han's physique might be comparable to 10th tier rare gold, but it could still be wounded by a 10th tier spirit tool, even severed. Wu Gaoyuan's battle prowess was too powerful, and in a few slashes, Ling Han started to spill blood violently. Even 10th tier rare metal physique couldn't withstand it. "Ha ha ha, tough guy, why don't you talk tough again?" He laughed loudly. "This isn't tough talk, it's strength," Ling Han said indifferently, operating Indestructible Heaven Scroll, and the wounds immediately healed automatically. If these injuries weren't cut by a shattering void tier elite, then the diamond body could heal them on its own. Unfortunately, a shattering void tier elite's attack obviously included martial intent, which could obstruct the diamond body from self-recovery, and so the Indestructible Heaven Scroll had to be operated to expel Wu Gaoyuan's martial intent for the injuries to recover. At a shocking pace, he instantly recovered completely, his blood and chi as exuberant as if they could burn the skies. What? Seeing this scene, everyone was speechless. What the hell, what level of recovery ability was that? A formidable physique alone could be slowly refined if it couldn't be damaged, but such recovery ability on top of such a physique, then there would be no answer. Such recovery ability, can you constantly use it? Wu Gaoyuan sneered. He wouldn't believe that Ling Han could limitlessly employ such a terrifying recovery ability. It definitely wouldn't be long before it would no longer be in effect. He attacked crazily, trying to force Ling Han to his limit. Everyone nodded. Such shocking recovery ability couldn't possibly be constantly maintained, it definitely exhausted an extreme amount of energy. Moreover, there was no need to wait for such recovery ability to disappear. As long as the recovery speed couldn't keep up with the destructive power, Ling Han would still die. However, beyond everyone's expectations, Ling Han stood up again and again. No matter which way the wind blew, he was like boulder, remaining unmoved. Wu Gaoyuan refused to buy it, believing all along that Ling Han would reach the limit in the next move, but he was disappointed over and over again. Ling Han stood up, again, and again. His strength was clearly stronger, and not just by a little bit, but by an absolutely overwhelming amount. However, encountering this freak, he had no way to defeat him for good, and could only strike him down continuously, yet couldn't see the possibility of killing him. The 8 kings finally revealed an exhilarated look. They originally thought that the 5 sects would get them this time, and true to their personalities, they definitely would keep their word and not sortie any soldiers in the following 100 years. Although nothing could be done, keeping a promise was obviously greater than anything else. This was truly an unexpected rescue from a desperate situation. Although Ling Han definitely couldn't win, as long as he didn't lose, this match would be a draw, and the entire wager would also be a draw. They obviously wouldn't need to keep the promise of not moving any troops in 100 years. Even Ma Duobao nodded slightly. He knew that Ling Han was remarkable, but had never expected him to be this remarkable. In contrast, on the side of the 5 sects, each and every one of their faces was gloomy. They intentionally gave the impression of weakness before, luring Ma Duobao into agreeing to the wager. Seeing that it would soon succeed, who would have expected that such a freak would come charging out? 9 battles ending in a draw. Would Ma Duobao agree not to take the field himself? Damn it, this damned brat. The 5 sects all hated Ling Han. If this battle really ended up in a draw, Ling Han would be the 5 sects' mortal enemy. Moreover, this child's cultivation was only in the deity transformation tier, so what if he crossed into the shattering void tier? Would there be anyone in the world that could suppress him? Wu Gaoyuan was driven mad. He was conceded a divine realm's genius, obviously looked down on the people of the lower realm. This time, the 5 great divine sects paid a great price to send 5 shattering void tier elites down in order to turn the tides. But now, a mere deity transformation tier warrior stopped him. If this were to spread back to the divine realm, would he have any face to see people in the future? He brandished the treasured sword and kept slashing Ling Han, swearing to annihilate Ling Han into pieces. Futile. Ling Han wasn't an indestructible diamond body, so he would also be injured, but his rate of recovery made people speechless. Unless one had the ability to destroy Ling Han's vitals in one attack, Ling Han would never be defeated fighting on like this. Wu Gaoyuan already used all his strength. He had acquired the sword heart, but never reached the level of illumination, so when he attempted to destroy Ling Han's soul with sword heart, Ling Han wasn't weaker than him. He'd also reached sword heart, and would even soon reach great mastery. The two fought fiercely. 1 day passed, 2 days passed, and 3 days passed. Ling Han was injured countless times, but it couldn't be seen at all. The only change was the many sets of clothes that he swapped into. It couldn't be helped the indestructible heaven's scroll couldn't recover his clothes, and obviously a new set of clothes could only be changed when the other was torn. Although there's no time limit, the fight can't go on endlessly, Ma Duobao spoke up. Enough, this match ends in a draw. How could it possibly be a draw? The 5 sects were obviously unwilling to admit it, and said one after another, Wu Gaoyuan clearly has the absolute advantage. Having the advantage is the same as winning? The Lunar King sneered. Then, since Ling Han is only in the deity transformation tier, after being able to fight a shattering void tier opponent for 3 days, this king can say that Ling Han has won. Ma Duobao walked forward a few steps and said, "This emperor says that this match is a draw. Who has any objections?" "I have." A person from the 5 sects jumped out. He was at the shattering void tier, but only the 3rd layer. Ma Duobao took a glance at him, and waved his right hand. Endless killing intent intertwined, and Pu, that shattering void tier elite was swept by a ball of light and instantly split into pieces, blood dripping and shaking the mountains. The shattering void tier elite actually couldn't stand up again, and his presence dispersed rapidly. He died. In one attack, an elite at the 3rd layer of the shattering void tier was killed, and separated by such a far distance, it was practically taking the general's head from hundreds of thousands of people as if taking something out of his pocket, easy and pleasant. This was Purple Moon Empire's #1 expert strength. Ma Duobao didn't take another glance, and simply said indifferently, "Who else has objections?" No one uttered a sound on the side of the 5 sects in the moment. Even those strong as Wu Qifang and the 3 others didn't dare to resist Ma Duobao head-on. Shattering Void Tier 20 stars of battle prowess? Definitely. How could a human achieve shattering void tier 20 stars of battle prowess? Even offsprings of divine beasts, descendants of saints, only a mere few can reach such heights. Damn it, if this were the divine realm, the sect could send anyone to kill him. Zhua Qifang and the three others communicated in soft voices. They were judging whether the five of them together could stop Ma Duobao. Even if they could, who would block the 8 kings? Wu Gaoyuan, take the axe. An old man with lightning flashing across the surface of the body threw an axe at Zhua Qifang fiercely. The mountain river axe. Not an imitation, but the true mountain river axe, with the realm power that created the axe's surface. Cutting down with this axe, would even 10th tier rare metal be directly cut in two? Chapter 832, Entering the Stage. Mountain and River Axe, created by the regulation powers of a realm, how astonishing would its destructive abilities be? Wu Gaoyuan took hold of the mountain and river axe, and immediately laughed loudly. This thing, in the immortal realm, could only be considered invincible in the shattering void tier, and definitely could not be proclaimed a god tool, but in this lower realm, it was definitely the strongest spirit tool, and there was no others that could match it. With this, how could he still survive? Ho ho, so shameless? Ma Duobao smirked coldly. He swept out a finger, and a deep mark immediately appeared between Ling Han and Wu Gaoyuan. A terrifying killing intent sword, and even for one of Wu Gaoyuan's might, he dared not cross over a single step. Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this? Could it be that you want to ruin our wager? The members of the 5 sects asked. They seemed to be polite, yet were in fact trapping Ma Duobao with their words. Ma Duobao said calmly, since you have taken out even the mountain and river axe, then I will no longer be reserved with you either. He paused, and called out loudly, Ling Han, hand that sword over to me. That sword? Realization instantly dawned on Ling Han. That was the Revere Life sword, and it had been personally forged by Ma Duobao's hands. Without hesitation, he summoned the Revere Life sword out of the Black Tower with a wave of his right hand, and threw it over to Ma Duobao. He had not planned on using this sword previously. In front of battle prowess of 18 stars of shattering void tier, even if the Revere Life sword was completely revived, it was not of much use. Ma Duobao received the sword, and gave it a few light strokes. The patterns on the sword immediately lit up. Not only was it completely revived, it had also become much stronger. He chuckled, and threw the Revere Life sword back over to Ling Han. So powerful. Ling Han gripped the Revere Life sword, and a feeling of invincibility rose up in his heart. He felt that even if immortals descended, he would still be able to kill them. With another wave of the hand from Ma Duobao, the mark on the ground instantly vanished, and the killing intent was no longer present either. You're reading on novel full thanks. Wu Gaoyuan gave a humph. Did Ling Han think that he would be able to stand against him just because he had a sword? His battle prowess was stronger than Ling Han's by who knew how many times, and now that the mountain and river axe was added into the equation, it was definitely not something difficult for him to cut Ling Han's body open. He once again charged out, slashing out at Ling Han. Ling Han waved his sword. Shua, the light of the sword gushed out, and killing intent boiled over. This strike was extremely frightening. Wu Gaoyuan did not have the powerful physique and recovery abilities that Ling Han had, so how could he possibly dare to take this strike head-on? He hurriedly brandished the mountain and river axe in a parry. Peng, a loud bang sounded, and killing intent overflowed. He actually failed to destroy Ling Han's attack. What? Everyone exclaimed in shock. That was the mountain and river axe, formed from the powers of an entire realm. Adding Wu Gaoyuan's own strength, he should have been able to slice apart Ling Han's sword light with a single blow, and it itself could not have been blocked either. The gap was really much too big, after all. And yet, Wu Gaoyuan's counter had actually been blocked. How could this be possible? What kind of sword is this? It could actually match the mountain and river axe. Wu Gaoyuan has 18 stars of shattering void tier of battle prowess, added with the mountain and river axe. his battle prowess should have directly spiked up to 20 stars. But Ling Han managed to block him with just a sword. This is too ridiculous. Only the 8 kings wore prideful expressions. This sword was the work of their boss, one that was so strong that he had surpassed common sense. I don't believe it. Wu Gaoyuan's whole head of black hair rose on ends. He gritted his teeth. He was a proud prodigy of the immortal realm, and was a whole 2 tiers superior to Ling Han. Furthermore, he was wielding a powerful weapon like the mountain and river axe. And yet, he couldn't even manage to deal with a mere deity transformation tier cultivator? Ling Han smiled faintly. Actually, the Revere Life sword had activated on its own, and his waving it around was merely for show. In truth, it should be said that it was the Revere Life sword that was ordering him around, and not he that was using the Revere Life sword. After Ma Duobao had done some tricks, this sword had not only activated, but had also become 10 times stronger than before. Just let the fight proceed, then. Anyways, he was merely doing the action, but not exerting any real energy, so no matter how long the battle took, it would be fine. Tisk, TSK, TSK, how lively. You don't mind if we join too, right? Another group of people walked out from the foot of the mountain, and every one of them looked incredibly strange. It was not that they had strange appearances, but that the aura they were exuding was very odd. Every one of them felt as if they had climbed out of a grave, eerie and frightening. This was not a misconception, because they were members of the Thousand Corpse Sect. The 9th Underworld King, Corpse Boss, Corpse 2, as well as Rong Huan Xian. Why was this guy together with the Thousand Corpse Sect? Both Ling Han and Wu Gaoyuan stopped. There would be no meaning even if they continued their battle. Ma Duobao's eyes swept over them. He asked, so the Thousand Corpse Sect is in a rush to die as well? The Thousand Corpse Sect's appearance at this point. Could it be that they had just been walking around, and somehow gotten lost? It was obviously impossible. They had purposely come here. Just think it was not possible that they had merely come to watch the excitement. The Thousand Corpse Sect had allied with the 5 sects. The 9th Underworld King laughed loudly, and asked, Your Majesty, do you really think that you are unmatched in this world? Indeed. Ma Duobao nodded honestly and without reservation. I am number 1 in this world, and I shall kill whomever does not acknowledge this fact. So, do you acknowledge it or not? This boast was very big, but the 9th Underworld King could find no way to refute it. In terms of power, he would only be in the ranks of the Sword King and Beast Snake King. He could not even match the 8 kings, what more actually exchange blows with Ma Duobao. But how could he allow his party's morale to weaken at this moment? I really do not acknowledge the fact, the 9th Underworld King smirked coldly. He stretched out a hand to summon something, and a copper coffin suddenly slid over. The 3 Lives Corpse Casket. Peng, the casket's lid opened, and a corpse soldier jumped out. Shockingly, its face had a whole bunch of eyes, and upon counting, there were actually as many as 18 of them. An 18-eyed corpse king. How was that possible? The Thousand Corpse Sect had schemed for several thousand years, and only just managed to produce a 15-eyed corpse king. Yet now, an 18-eyed corpse king actually appeared? Ling Han could not help but turn to look at Rong Huan Xian. This was definitely linked to the 3 Lives Corpse Casket. Could it be that Rong Huan Xian had come to some form of agreement with the Thousand Corpse Sect, and had thus returned the 3 Lives Corpse Casket to them? With all 3 treasures assembled, some kind of metamorphosis had been stimulated. You plan to stop me with just that? Ma Duobao could not help but laugh loudly, his small eyes squinting. He appeared to be completely harmless, but a terrifying killing intent was exuded from his whole body, causing everyone to feel their blood running cold. With battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, he was definitely the strongest person in this world, so who could remain fearless in front of him? Have you forgotten us, Your Majesty? The elites of the 5 sects all stepped out as well. They had a total of 5 ultimate elites with 18 stars of shattering void tier of battle prowess, and furthermore had a powerful, deadly weapon like the mountain and river axe as well. You all? Ma Duobao began to show his domineering side, and said coldly, a flock of lambs, no matter how many there are, how could they be a match for a lion? Hearing him describe them as lambs, whether it was the 5 sects of the 1,000-corpse sect, everyone looked indignant. Indeed, they did not have battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier, but with so many Shattering Void tier elites, how could it be that they would not be able to kill him by ganging up on him? Since that is the case, 9th Underworld King, just do as what we have previously agreed on. Let's work together, an antique of the 5 sects said. All right, the 9th Underworld King agreed decisively, and nodded at Rong Huanxian. The latter summoned out a copper coffin as well, and another 18-eyed corpse king jumped out. 3 lives corpse casket consisted of 3 caskets, and now, one was in the hands of the 9th Underworld King, while the other 2 were still with Rong Huanchuan. Thankfully, they only had 2 18-eyed corpse kings, but their battle prowess was still very frightening. 7 great elites with battle prowess of 18 stars of Shattering Void tier had joined forces against Ma Duobao. Chapter 833, The Final Battle. Ma Duobao did not take them seriously at all, and said, "Come at me, all of you. Without you saying so, that was our intention." Zhuo Qifang, Wu Gaoyuan, and the other 3 prodigies of the immortal realm, as well as 2 18-eyed corpse kings, the terror this group brought would make anyone shiver. Ho-ho, battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. Even in the immortal realm, this is incredibly rare. I would really like to take a look at it. Too bad, so what if you have 20 stars of battle prowess? There is too big a gap in the immortal level. The gap between 10 stars and 20 stars of Shattering Void tier isn't even very big, so there is absolutely no reason to charge up to this limit. From this day on, the Purple Moon Empire will no longer exist. Zhuo Qifang and the others all spoke with cold smirks, their words filled with disdain. Yet Ling Han shook his head. It was precisely because there was too big a gulf between each tier on the immortal level that there was a need to perfect cultivation on every cultivation level below that. Otherwise, on what basis would those so-called geniuses with 1 star or 2 stars be stronger than others? Zhuo Qifang and the others spoke this way merely because they were not able to touch the high level of 20 stars. Any person sent down from the 5 sects of the immortal realm, if they were not suppressed by the regulation powers of the realm, would be able to sweep aside all opposition in the lower realm, but the 5 sects themselves might not be any kind of top-tier party in the immortal realm. Thus, the younger generation that they had nurtured might not have perfected their cultivation on every cultivation level. However, being able to reach 18 stars on Shattering Void tier was very extraordinary by itself. At least, in the lower realm, who knew how many millennia had passed for 2 such freaks like Ma Duobao and Helian Tianyun to appear. Ma Duobao carelessly raised a hand, and delivered an attack towards the 7 great elites. Hey! The 5 great prodigies all struck their own blows. Wu Gaoyuan even brandished the mountain and river axe. As the axe swept past, even space itself was torn open. The 2 18-eyed corpse kings were unafraid of Ma Duobao's might, and directly charged towards him. Pang, pang. The 2 great corpse kings were instantly sent flying back, but with this collision, Ma Duobao's attack had been dissipated considerably, and Zhuo Qifang and the others managed to easily parry it. You're reading on novel full thanks. From this, it was clear how powerful Ma Duobao was. Just a careless strike, yet it could only be matched with the combined effort of 7 great elites with 18 stars of Shattering Void tier of battle prowess. Ping, ping. Pang, pang. They were soon embroiled in a fierce battle. Both sides definitely had ultimate moves that they had not yet used. They battled all the way from the foot of the mountain to the peak, and then into the skies. Whole swathes of stars fell. It was as if it was the end of the world. Thankfully, the stars in the skies had also been formed by the powers of the world, and could be replenished endlessly. If not, going by how they were fighting, no matter how many stars there were in the skies, they would not survive the punishment the fighters were inflicting on them. "Hee, have you washed your necks clean?" the heavenly astral king asked with a smirk. Though the 8 kings could not be considered second-tier elites as they were now, with the appearance of battle prowess of 18 stars of shattering void tier, 15 stars of battle prowess would still rank them on the 3rd tier. Although there were only 8 of them, they had enough confidence that they would be able to crush the over 100 shattering void tier elites from the 5 sections. What shameless boasting! A few brown-haired antiques began to ignite their vitality. Hong, a terrifying power erupted from their bodies, and they had instantly raised their battle prowess to 14 stars. The 5 sects indeed had deep roots. Ordinarily, once they entered the shattering void tier, the elites of the 5 sects would choose to seal themselves away, and wait until the reckoning was complete, then enter into the immortal realm and continue their cultivation. This would save effort, and lead to better results. However, there were also a few that could first choose not to seal themselves off, but rather continue cultivation. They would only leave themselves a few dozen years of time, then use the time liquid. They were called the Protector Technique Kings. If a major issue that would threaten the survival of the 5 sects appeared, though it was not very likely, they would unseal themselves, and step out to eliminate the danger. But, because they themselves did not have many years left, every time they battled, they had to burn their vitality. This actually was expending their lifespan as a price, and would further shorten their already limited lifespans. Even if they entered into the immortal realm in future, they might not have enough time to advance into the immortal level. This was something that required considerable awareness and courage. Thus, the Protector Technique Kings were the most respected. Even Zhua Qifang and the other prodigies of the immortal realm were very polite and incredibly respectful towards them. There was a total of 5 Protector Technique Kings, and 4 amongst them had reached 14 stars of shattering void tier of battle prowess, whereas the last had achieved 15 stars of shattering void tier. With the addition of the 5 of them, the might of the 5 sects naturally experienced a great increase. Charge. Though the Lunar King was a woman, her temper was the most violent, and she was the first to charge out and attack. 8 Lunar Techniques. From the very beginning, she was unleashing powerful moves. Her 2 dainty hands transformed into earth-shattering giant palms that delivered successive palm strikes downwards. The other 7 kings were naturally not just going to sit by and watch, they, too, charged out respectively. On the other side, Ling Han seemed to have become completely free. He rubbed his chin, and mumbled to himself, "Is there still a need for me to move?" The Revere Life Sword was no longer glowing. In actual truth, it was Ma Duobao who was controlling it from a distance just now. Now that Ma Duobao himself was fighting against powerful enemies, he naturally would not have the leisure to manipulate the Revere Life Sword anymore. Though Ling Han's defenses were top tier, and there might not be any other that could match him, his destructive abilities, in the face of shattering void tier elites, were completely negligible. Whether he moved or otherwise, it did not seem like it would cause any changes. "Ling Han, I'll be your opponent." Su Xiu ran, wielding the absolute saber, ran out. Ling Han swatted a hand at him, and said, "I can't bother to fight with you, you are too weak now." Su Xiu ran was completely enraged, trembling. He was still a well-known figure of the younger generation in this whole world. Even in the immortal realm, he could still be considered a genius as he had grasped Saber Heart, though he wouldn't be as rare as he was here. "You are underestimating me too much." "What if I join in, then?" "Me too." "And I." Dong Linger, the small sword emperor, and the son of lightning all stepped out as well, their eyes cold and harsh. Ling Han shook the Revere Life Sword, and said, "Fine, then I'll send you all down to hell so that you can atone for the innocent blood your predecessors have spilled. They are all ants, contributing what they have for the sake of our immortal realm. Should that not be their responsibility?" the son of lightning said, a twisted smile curling his lips. He had already summoned out the replica of the mountain and river axe. There was a sliver of the realm powers condensed inside, so its might was not to be underestimated. Ling Han's expression grew harsh, and he raised his sword level. Pointing at the son of lightning, he said, "Just for these words, you deserve to die." You would have to be able to kill me first. The son of lightning laughed loudly. Brandishing the mountain and river axe, he charged out in attack. This treasure had already been activated, and was exuding a terrifying might. But the Revere Life Sword showed absolutely no reaction. Could it be that it had expended too much energy in the battle of ultimate brilliance just now? This was not something impossible. The mountain and river axe could be proclaimed the strongest spirit tool in this whole realm, and adding Wu Gaoyuan's own power, how terrifying was that? Yet he was still blocked by the Revere Life Sword. Though Ma Duobao had been manipulating it, there would definitely have been a great expense of energy, so it was logical that it could not unleash its powers now. Ha 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 ha. When Su Xiao saw this, he could not help but laugh loudly. If this sword of yours is unable to activate, how could it be that you will be able to match us? He activated the Absolute Saber as well, and slashed out at Ling Han. Once these two spirit tools were activated, they would equal shattering void tier battle prowess, and furthermore, that would be 10 stars at least, which was even stronger than the Ice Dragon Ground Blast formation. This had far exceeded Ling Han's own battle prowess. Chapter 834, Scaring Away the Third Killing Formation. Ling Han used the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven, and added with the Demon Fairy Steps, his body became incredibly agile. He had drawn Zhu Xian Air, Rabbit, and the gold-seeking rat into the Black Tower so that they wouldn't be unexpectedly wounded in the battle royale, because he could not divert his attention to look after them as well. There was no need for him to worry about the 1,000 veteran soldiers. They had placed themselves in a battle formation, and with incomparably frightening battle prowess, charged into the group battle the 8 kings were involved in to fight alongside their respective bosses. Although the Absolute Saber and Mountain and River Axe were powerful, they were still merely 2 spirit tools. Furthermore, they did not have tool spirits. This meant that they could only deliver frighteningly mighty attacks, but were not capable of automatically locking down onto their targets, and thus required manual control. No matter how monstrously talented Su Xiao and the Son of Lightning were, their cultivation level was still a great disadvantage. Firstly, they would have to be able to grasp Ling Han's movements to aim their attacks. As long as they could do this, with the speed of the attacks delivered from these 2 spirit tools, Ling Han would not be able to dodge. But the problem was, they would have to grasp Ling Han's movements first. How fast was Ling Han's speed now? It was a whole blur to their eyes. For every 10 attacks they shot out, at least 9 would miss. If they faced any other person, it would be fine. With the might of these 2 spirit tools, suffering even a single attack, even if he did not die, he would be heavily injured. But it was Ling Han now. His physique was as tough as level 10 precious metal, so what would being hit with a single attack do? It did not manage to give him an itch, what more pain? If he was slashed 100 over times, perhaps he would only have a very shallow wound. There was nothing that could be done. The toughness of his physique allowed him to act as recklessly as he liked. Niu will come and help you. Hu Niu charged out as well. Her physique was far inferior to Ling Han's, but in terms of speed, she was superior. As she scrambled up and down, her tiny fists and claws were filled with destructive ability, and posed an incredible threat to Su Xiao and his group. On all 3 sides, it was a battle royale. Whichever battle it was, they were on the level of shattering void tier. Thus, even heaven tier cultivators were not qualified to join in on this kind of battle, and could only watch from afar unless they, too, could set up their own formation. But the battle between Ma Duobao and Wu Gaoyuan was the real decisive battle. Whoever won this battle, it would doubtlessly result in a massacre of the other side. Therefore, though the other 2 groups were battling furiously, they all split out a portion of their attention to focus on the fierce battle taking place in the highest spot. Would it be Ma Duobao who emerged victorious over all his contenders, or would he be swallowed by the pack of wolves? In the second group, the Beast Snake King shouted loudly, "Azura Demon Emperor, are you not going to reveal yourself?" The Azura Demon Emperor. Ling Han's heart trembled. That was an existence with 15 stars of shattering void tier of battle prowess, and could very likely tip the balance of victory in the second group to one side. You really have a dog's nose. I've already hidden so far away, yet you could still sniff me out. The Azura Demon Emperor appeared. He was still possessing the body of a sturdy man, and there was black demonic chi twined all over his body. Merely one look, and one could tell that he was far different from an ordinary person. The other one too. How long do you want to continue watching the show? The Sword King called out as well, shooting out a flash of sword chi to a distant spot. Hee. A cloaked person shot out from that spot. The third killing formation. A person who could set up formation techniques by nature, from birth. He was the strongest existence in the world, and could kill even shattering void tier elites. Ling Han's eyes swept over him, and he could not help but secretly feel shocked. He had seen this person once before, but at the time, the latter gave him a feeling of weakness. Though he was very powerful, he himself was extremely weak and feeble. But now, this feeling was gone. Previously, he had helped out the Thousand Corpse Sect, and the payment he had received was probably related to this, compensating for a weakness of his. How powerful would this kind of third killing formation be? The 9 great killing formations could all kill shattering void tier elites. To be specific, Ling Han had only seen the 4th killing formation. Moreover, it was not naturally formed, but a handicapped formation that the Thousand Corpse Sect had laid out, and had been easily broken by Feng Peyun. But how strong would a third killing formation that had compensated for its disadvantage be? Could he kill a shattering void tier with 10 stars of battle prowess, or 15 stars? I have been asked a favor. I will only act once, kill one person, and leave, the third killing formation said, his eyes focused on the 8 kings. He said he would only kill one person, and from the looks of it, the person he wanted to kill was one of the 8 kings. With the inclusion of the Azura Demon Emperor, the 8 kings were actually no longer at the advantage in the battle. The third killing formation really could kill one of them. Then, with this as an opening, the remaining 7 kings would definitely retreat in defeat little by little. They would either retreat or die in battle here. It was difficult for a shattering void tier elite to die, but it did not mean that they were not killable. Ling Han wanted to move to block the third killing formation. Though his battle prowess was not strong, his defenses were much too terrifying, and it would be a perfect thing for him to use that to cause a disruption in enemy plans. You had best stay here obediently. Su Xiao smirked coldly. Working together with the Son of Lightning, they stopped Ling Han from interfering. The cooperation of the Absolute Saber and the Mountain and River Axe, if even that could not detain Ling Han, then something would be wrong. Humph. Ma Duobao's cold humph was heard from the skies. For the sake of, I will spare your life, scram. The third killing formation could not help but sneer. What a big boast, to actually dare tell him to scram. He raised his head to look upwards. Initially, his expression was one of disapproval, but immediately, his expression changed drastically. Though the masses could not see his expression, they could clearly see his entire body was trembling. You are, he exclaimed in shock as if he had experienced a scare. His tone was filled with indescribable terror. Are you getting lost or not? Ma Duobao rebuked harshly. Yes. Yes. The third killing formation did not even dare say another word. He actually just turned around and left, and in an instant, he had disappeared without a trace. That was the third killing formation that could kill even shattering void tier, something formed by nature. How could it be that he would be scared off by just a single word? Could it be that Ma Duobao had another identity? The third killing formation had recognized him, then had been scared off and fled. Humph, you still dare to lose focus when you are exchanging blows with us? Wu Gaoyuan and his group smirked coldly, and they all made their moves. Hong. Instantly, Ma Duobao was drowned in endless light. In this kind of highly intense battle, how could he split his attention? Wu Gaoyuan and his group all smiled. Though the third killing formation had been scared off, if they could kill Ma Duobao, or at least inflict a serious injury on him, it would be absolutely worth it. As the brilliance dissipated, Ma Duobao stood there proudly, without even a scratch. If one had to insist, then there were a few places on his imperial robes that had been torn, which proved that he had indeed suffered the barrage of attacks just now. However, his body had not been wounded. What? Wu Gaoyuan and the others exclaimed in shock. What was going on here? They all had battle prowess of 18 stars of shattering void tier. If their attack landed solidly, so what if the other had battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier? He would still be severely wounded, or even killed directly. Your physique, Zhua Qifang came to realize. It has reached the toughness of level 10 precious metal. Pooh! Everyone choked in astonishment. Previously, that terrifying physique of Ling Han's had already given them a psychological fear. Furthermore, Ling Han only had a monstrous physique, whereas his battle prowess was completely negligible. But what about now? Ma Duobao's battle prowess was already on top of everyone here, and adding this kind of powerful defense to the mix, how were they supposed to continue fighting? Wu Gaoyuan and his group all swallowed with difficulty. This was the first time that they felt that they had completely lost control of the situation in this war. This Ma Duobao could completely match the alternative dragon from years ago. His battle prowess was invincible, and his defenses were unbreakable. Even if immortals descended, what could they do against him? Thankfully, shattering void tier elites still had a limited lifespan. Time was the strongest weapon. I couldn't kill you, but I could trap you in the prison of this realm until your death. Ma Duobao smiled calmly, and countered, without this bit of ability, what use is there to speak of splitting open the skies? Shuang, his aura was spiking crazily, killing intent surging forth. Even Wu Gaoyuan and the others felt a chill run down their backs, goosebumps covering their whole bodies. They felt that he could kill them just by raising his hand. Chapter 835, First Killing Formation. Humans, how could they be so powerful until such an extent? 18 stars of shattering void tier, this was practically already the ultimate battle prowess of this tier, and there were actually as many as 7 people who had attained it. By joining forces, they could definitely rival someone with 20 stars of shattering void tier, so why did they still feel trepidation? Could it be that Ma Duobao's battle prowess surpassed that of 20 stars? Impossible. Wu Gaoyuan and others shook their heads. They absolutely could not believe that one could surpass the battle prowess limit of 20 stars. Even the descendants of divine beasts and sages could rarely achieve the battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, let alone surpass it. We must get rid of him today. Otherwise, given the boost of power of the nation, he will only become stronger. Zhua Qifang said. Attack! Xiao Miaoyan screamed, brandishing a long blood-red sword. She then made a cut at her eyebrows, her forehead broke open, and a drop of crimson blood rushed forth, as thick and viscous as if it had crystallized. The moment this drop of blood appeared, heaven and earth were moved, black clouds began to roll, with blazing white lighting looming in the background. This drop of blood was just too powerful. It was strong to the point of almost exceeding the limit of this realm, which resulted in the reaction of heaven and earth. Immortal blood. Ma Duobao was finally showing a cautious expression. The immortals really didn't just send 5 people down, but also sent personal artifacts. Although a drop of blood couldn't represent the immortals at all, could one imagine the power of immortals' blood in this lower realm? Xiao Miaoyan began mumbling something. It was unknown what she was mumbling about. At this moment, this drop of immortal's blood was transformed into a sudden rain that splashed on her long sword. Suddenly, this sword exuded an endless brilliance, its power could even suppress that of the mountain and river axe. Just a single drop of immortal's blood could boost the sword's power to an extent where it could at least rival the real mountain and river axe. It was really too terrifying. It was the same for Zhua Qifang and the others. They each took out a drop of immortal's blood and smeared it on their own spirit tools. In an instant, their auras became more terrifying by several times, just as if they had taken on the body of immortals. Now, the battle prowess of these 5 people would have reached 20 stars of shattering void tier. Each one of them wouldn't be any inferior to Ma Duobao. Die. The 5 people joined forces, with each of them launching powerful attacks. The 5 spirit tools unleashed their power that surged upwards, causing a great number of stars to fall. How could this be blocked? With the power of the 5 being 20 stars of shattering void tier, even a physique of level 10 precious metal would still be slashed apart. Could Ma Duobao also have the terrifying healing ability like Ling Han? Everything would end. Ma Duobao had a solemn expression. Strong as he might be, he didn't dare to look lightly upon the battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, not to mention when his opponents were as many as 5. He held out his finger, and gently tapped chest, saying, "Release." Wang. In an instant, endless killing intent began circulating. While his body was emitting white light, one could clearly see that his exposed skin was covered with glowing patterns, ancient, thick, and imposing. What was even more astonishing was the killing intent. The sight of these patterns could make a person's heart feel fear and flesh shiver. People with lower cultivation level would immediately be blinded at first sight. Martial intent? No, these were patterns of a formation. Ling Han had seen Yin Hong brand formation patterns on her own body. This was very practical. Using her own body as a formation, the power of the patterns could be activated anytime for attack or defense. Yet, these formation patterns on Ma Duobao, it seemed as if he was born with them. So much so that Ling Han doubted that anyone could reproduce these patterns. This was because they were extremely uncomfortable to the eyes just by looking at them. And this was when he had activated the Eye of Truth and was circulating Sword Heart at the same time. Would ordinary shattering void tier cultivators dare to stare at it? Yet, if one didn't even dare to look at it, how could one reproduce these patterns? Being so complex, how could they be mastered if one had not studied them meticulously for decades, or even centuries? Born with these patterns? Damn, then he would be the same as the 3rd killing formation. It was no wonder that he had shown mercy to the 3rd killing formation previously, and his manner of speaking was odd. It was no wonder that the 3rd killing formation was so emotionally moved. It was because they were similar and recognized each other. But the 3rd killing formation was actually scared off by a single word from Ma Duobao. What did this mean? The world's 1st killing formation. The 5 people including Zhua Qifang all halted their attacks simultaneously, while their faces revealed expressions of horror. Ma Duobao was unexpectedly a natural formation in human form, and the 1st killing formation at that. Legend had it that the 1st killing formation could slaughter immortals. How could the group of 5 including Zhua Qifang not be afraid? They had yet to become immortals. Ling Han finally understood. It was no wonder that when Ma Duobao had gotten on top of the martial stone, he had left behind number 1 as his name. This was not just his pride, but also his real name. The world's 1st killing formation. Ma Duobao dealt out a blow, and Hong, endless killing intent circulated, and the entire realm became shrouded. Everywhere the white light swept past, space was forcefully torn open, and endless energy flowed through in disorder. Its impact was incomparably terrifying. This was his true strength, the world's 1st killing formation that could slaughter immortals. The group of 5 including Zhou Qifang were forced to stand together into a corner. They joined forces to confront the attack. So what if the strongest spirit tools in the world joined forces? They were still suppressed, they could barely defend themselves. Poo, piu, blood was splashing out from their bodies, and they became heavily injured in an instant. This made the 5 great sects and 1,000 corpse sect lose hope. The world's 1st killing formation, it would kill whatever stood in its path, be it gods or Buddha. In this small realm, it was absolutely invincible. Otherwise, would it be crowned as the number 1? Hong. At this moment, something weird happened. Coming out from the crevice in space Ma Duobao had torn open was the bow of a ship. Since the crevice in space was not very big, only a tiny bit of the bow of the ship came out. However, this tiny bit was enough to make everyone weak in the knees, causing them to neatly fall from the sky. No one was an exception. It was the same for the group of 5 including Zhou Qifang, the 18-eyed corpse kings, and even Ma Duobao. Peng, 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 more than 100 shattering void tier cultivators had fallen from the sky like dumplings, and every one of them had fallen down pitifully. They were in an incomparably miserable state. This scene was actually a bit funny since no one expected shattering void tier cultivators could also become like this, but no one was able to laugh at this moment. Instead, their expressions revealed unsurpassed horror. Everyone knew that the void was the most dangerous place in the world. If one was to land within it, even the physique of level 10 precious metal would be quickly torn into pieces. Yet, it was indeed too difficult to open up the void. This could only be done by shattering void tier cultivators, thereby opening up a channel to enter into the immortal realm. Yet, shattering the void was an absolutely dangerous matter. One could easily fall to death. Even if there weren't any ambush from the great formation put up by the 5 great sects, the maximum number of cultivators of the shattering void tier who could successfully shatter the void was only half. But an entire ship was coming out through the void. This was like a myth. What materials could resist the destructive power of the void? In that moment, everyone had lost any intention of fighting. They were only left with feelings of shock and puzzlement. This ship, what did it represent? Hong, 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 the bow of the ship gently struck the crevice in space. It obviously didn't seem heavy, but after each impact, the heavens were shaken. Even cultivators of the shattering void tier couldn't help but vomit blood as this impact seemed to have directly hit their hearts. Black Tower vibrated gently inside him. Ling Han remained nonchalant as if nothing happened, so did Hunyo. This little girl was similarly very strange. Chapter 836, The Huge Ship That Came Out the Void. Hong. Finally, after the impact from striking at the crevice more than a dozen times, the bow of the ship appeared completely. The entire hull of the ship followed suit, sliding through the opening due to the pull of gravity, and came crashing down to the ground. Peng, the bow of the ship hit a mountain peak, and the latter easily collapsed. The great protective formation was practically useless. That shield of light barrier immediately crumbled into innumerable fragments upon impact, scattered into an infinite distance. The lofty mountain collapsed as if it were made of sand and stones, which would completely disintegrate with just a single touch. Once the bow hit the ground, the entire ship swerved downwards loudly, and landed on the ground with a deafening bang. The ship lay flat on the ground, appearing as if it was sailing. The ship was extremely long and tall, its length was nearly 1 kilometer, while its height was more than 170 meters. From a distance, it looked like a small mountain. The ship's entire hull was dark green in color, and mainly made of wood, yet it was impossible to ascertain which tree species the wood belonged to. A ship made of wood was capable of resisting the powerful pressure and tearing force of the void? How could this be acceptable? It was unknown how many years the ship had existed within the void. The flag placed at the bow of the ship was completely destroyed, leaving only the bare flagpole. Aside from that, there were several holes in the ship's hull, which appeared to be caused by external bombardment. If the ship had been bombarded within the void, then that would be acceptable. However, if the ship had already been bombarded before entering the void, then that would indeed be extremely scary. Whose strength was so powerful to have caused such damage to the ship that even the void couldn't do anything to, and what kind of destructive power could have achieved this? The latter possibility was more likely, given that the void could blast holes in the hull of the ship. How could it just blast a few holes? It would have certainly destroyed the entire ship. The big ship lay there quietly. Although it caused a stir when it appeared, it was now extremely quiet. The hull was originally shining, but its luster now appeared somewhat dim. It looked ordinary. Those who didn't know the truth would have thought that a terrible tsunami had brought this ship here from the sea. The pressure had weakened a lot, although it still made people somewhat uncomfortable. There was no longer that agonizing feeling that made people vomit blood. For a moment, everyone's eyes were burning. Since this ship could pass through the void without being destroyed, it was precisely a treasure in and of itself. If the ship could be dismantled and its materials used for refining, there was no knowing how many high-grade spirit tools could be made from it. Moreover, with the hull already being so precious, if there was something inside it, then what kind of treasure would that be? What use was there to continue fighting? Everyone rushed towards the big ship. They wanted to leap onto the deck and enter the ship through the cabin doors, but soon discovered that they simply couldn't make it onto the deck. It was merely a height of 170 meters or so, yet it was like an insurmountable mountain. No matter how high they jumped or flew, they were always lacking a little bit. They had no way of landing on the top of the ship. The same was true for shattering void tier cultivators. This made them even more certain that this was truly a treasure that would transcend everything. Even in the immortal realm, it would be something that everyone would fight tooth and nail for. If the deck couldn't be reached, then weren't there some holes in the ship's hull? Someone gave it a try, and proceeded to enter smoothly. This made others excited, and they quickly followed suit. Should there be any godly artifact inside the ship, it might immediately turn the tide of the battle. Your Majesty. The 8 kings simultaneously looked at Ma Duobao. Let's go in to take a look. Ma Duobao nodded. He tried to block the 5 great sects and 1,000 corpse sect from entering, but his power immediately disappeared as soon as he approached the big ship. Now, everyone's battle prowess was no longer important. The important point was that this ship could change everything. Tanned brother, what about you? Ma Duobao turned around to ask Ling Han. I will go in by myself. Ling Han nodded. Good. Ma Duobao left the 1,000 elite troops behind. Leading the 8 kings, he entered through one of the holes in the ship's hull. Ling Han brought out Zhu Xian Air, Rabbit, and Gold-Seeking Rat from the Black Tower, and recounted to them what had happened earlier. Treasure, the world's biggest treasure. Rabbit became round-eyed with amazement. Rat, Lord Rabbit can confirm that this is a treasure even in the immortal realm. You must obtain it. The Gold-Seeking Rat was even more excited, directly throwing itself there. It then hung from the ship's hull and nibbled at it with great effort. As it turned out, it had fixed its attention onto a rivet on the hull, and was exerting all its effort to pull it out. However, when its mouth latched onto the big ship, it was completely unable to use its ability. Naturally, it became so anxious that it screamed, making loud z, z, z sounds. The delicious food was in front of you, but you couldn't eat it. This made it anxious to the extreme. Ling Han had never seen the gold-seeking rat so agitated. Even if it was given the level 10 precious metal, it would not have been so eager. It seemed that the value of the ship itself had exceeded that of level 10 precious metal. This made sense, otherwise, how could it have resisted the pressure of the void? Come, we shall go in to take a look. Ling Han took the lead. Hunyo tilted her head to one side, while her hand grabbed onto Ling Han's clothes, allowing him to bring her in with him. She suddenly said, Weird, Nyo seems to have seen this big ship. Is that so? Ling Han's heart was moved. Think carefully, where and when did you see it? Nyo can't remember. Hunyo answered in disappointment. Ling Han smiled, patted her little head, and said, It's all right. Once inside, you will see more things, which perhaps may help you remember. The origins of Hunyo were unusual, and she was incomparably formidable and terrifying. To say that she might be connected to this mysterious ship was not an impossibility. They chose a hole in the ship, through which they entered the lowest floor thereof. It was very dark inside, so dark that even they could not see clearly. This was extremely extraordinary. One had to know that they could still see things even in a darker environment with their eyesight, unless there was some kind of restriction there. Only that would affect their eyesight. Ling Han raised his hand, transforming his origin power into fire attribute. A blazing flame was burning on his palm, yet despite it, the light could not reach very far. It was as if there was an invisible force that would suppress and prevent the spreading of light. Fortunately, they could at least see things within a range of over 3 meters. They were in a cabin, but found it to be completely empty. Presumably, the opening of the hole was caused by the rushing force of the void, which had also destroyed everything inside. This was easy to understand. The outer defense had to be the strongest, while the inside would be much more fragile, just like with the Great Mountain Protection Formation. Opening the hatch, they appeared in a very long walkway outside, with cabins on both sides. One by one, they pushed open the door to each cabin, only to find that all of them were empty, just as if they had been looted by robbers. They walked for a while, and found that they had reached the end of the walkway, but there wasn't any staircase to the upper floor. Hence, they turned around and walked back. Anyway, the hull was only a kilometer long, and it would not waste much time even if they walked back and forth for a few hundred times. But when they were halfway there, unexpectedly, they saw 5 women coming towards them. They were by no means people from the 5 great sects, Thousand Corpse Sect, or Purple Moon Empire. They were each holding onto a spear tightly in their hands, clad in a battle gear made of silver metal, which sparkled with a bright silvery radiance. Could they be crew members? Yikes, they weren't dead yet? You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.